All right, let's go ahead and call the Senate to order. Sergeant Arms will please secure the chamber doors. Members, please take your seats. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Mr. President.
All right, Senators, on this incredibly beautiful inside session, not outdoor session. Sorry to the Senator from the 26th, I know. On March 10th, 2026, we are so pleased to have again with us Reverend Amin Flowers of Life Church Ministries in Baltimore, Maryland, guest of me. Please rise for the invocation.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning, everyone. We are getting ready to pray. We ask that you will center your spirits and quiet your hearts as we move forward. Brothers and sisters, a leader, or rather a true leader, is not a searcher for consensus, but a molder of consensus. So our prayer this morning is for the molders of consensus as you all gather together to address the concerns and cares of Marylanders. We pray today for the thousands of Marylanders living beneath the line of poverty and unable to fulfill their potential. We ask that you show and shower extra love on those living on the margins and those who feel neglected by those who choose to say no to their existence. In the words of the prophet, what does the Lord require of us? Today, the Holy requires of each of us to take an opportunity to give and express and extend a measure of grace towards humanity, thinking less of ourselves as we decrease, as others may increase. We pray for the Eastern Shore as well as East Baltimore. We believe that what can be done on Garrison Boulevard will be done in Garrett County. Today we thank you for truth tellers in this Senate. We thank you for those who choose to repel lies of selfishness and move towards a more loving and just society. We believe what the scripture teaches us about representing love as we represent for the living against those who repel those teachings. Today, we call on the spirit of Dr. King to radically love and to lift up our brothers and sisters who strive to stand against bullies and bigotry, and those who sit with a disdain for dignity and deliverance. We ask that you bless this state as we attempt to balance budgets, put policies in place, and provide justice for all. Today we call for the liberty of love to lift us up, a love that relieves us, a life to free us, justice to remain with us, mercy to remind us, peace to guide us, and an Almighty to go with us. In the name of the one who gave us a Martin King to dream, a Harriet Tubman for a spiritual GPS, a Douglas, a gift to speak, a Marshall, a gift to litigate, and ultimately Billy, her blues. To this auspicious body, we pray and say amen. Thank you.
Great to see you.
Good to see you. Do well today.
Thank you. All right, Senators, if there's no objections, we'd ask that we journalize the pastor's invocation today. Such a wonderful leader in the 46th District, dad and everything, so he's pleased to have him with us. Let's go ahead and see, has everybody recorded their presence today? Has everyone recorded their presence? If so, the clerk will take the call. With 41 members in the chamber and a quorum being present, the Senate of Maryland is again back in session. Let's go ahead and start with the senator from the 33rd. 33rd has a resolution, followed by the senator from the capital city.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Colleagues, please join me in welcoming Dr. Courtney Glickman, who was recently named the Maryland DC Association for Play Therapy's 2025 Play Therapist of the Year. Dr. Glickman exemplifies the very best of the play therapy profession through her clinical expertise, leadership, and unwavering commitment to the well-being of children and families. As the founder and clinical director of the Collective Healing Center in Arnold, Maryland, Dr. Glickman has built an innovative practice grounded in trauma-focused, integrated play therapy. Play therapy is a specialized form of counseling that allows children to express their thoughts, emotions, and experiences through play, helping them process difficult feelings and experiences in a way that are developmentally appropriate and healing. Through this work, Dr. Glickman has helped countless children and families in our community, including many in my district, navigate challenges, build resilience, and find a path toward healing. Her approach thoughtfully incorporates expressive arts, sand tray therapy, nature-based interventions, and a deep understanding of child development. She is joined today by her family, her husband Michael, children Avi and Lila, and her mother Marsha Ford. I've also had the pleasure of knowing Dr. Glickman through our community as her daughter Lila attended preschool with my daughter Lucy. In addition to her family here today, she has a little fan club up in the gallery as my constituents Jane Valentino and her son Josh Hausworth have joined us today to watch her be recognized. And I'd ask that the resolution be read in full.
The clerk will read the resolution in full.
Be it hereby known to all that the Senate of Maryland offers its sincerest congratulations to Dr. Courtney Glickman in recognition of your selection as the Maryland DC Association for Play Therapy's 2025 Play Therapist of the Year. The entire membership extends its best wishes on this memorable occasion and directs this resolution be presented on this 10th day of March 2026.
The clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President?
Has everyone recorded their vote? If so, the clerk will take the call. To Dr. Courtney Glickman and your excellent work in play therapy, congratulations on being the 2025 Therapist of the Year. All right, next we have some additional guests and recognize the senator from the capital city.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, if you see a beautiful sea of blue and gold today, it is because today is the Legislative Action Day for Sigma Gamma Rho Sorority Incorporated. Sigma Gamma Rho was founded in 1922 by 7 educators on the campus of Butler University. Joining us here today on the floor are Sigma Gamma Rho members and my sorors that have joined us here today. We have the 25th Regional Director, Dawn S. Stanton. We have, thank you, Unique Gray, Area 1 Coordinator. We have Jocelyn Rout, Political Action Director. We have a woman familiar to this body, the Alpha Alpha Sigma Chapter Basilisk, Nashana Kess. And we have a woman very familiar to this body, life member and Prince George's County Executive, Aisha Braveboy. Mr. President, I'm truly honored to have my sorors here. They are also in the gallery. If you see them standing, they are represented in the beautiful blue and gold that represents Sigma Gamma Rho Sorority Incorporated, where we pride ourselves on greater service and greater progress. I would ask that the resolution be read in full.
The clerk will read the resolution in full.
Be it hereby known to all that the Senate of Maryland offers its sincerest congratulations to Sigma Gamma Rho Sorority Incorporated in recognition of your exemplary leadership and outstanding service to empowering and uplifting communities during Women's Health Month. History Month, the entire membership extends its best wishes on this memorable occasion and directs this resolution be presented on this 10th day of March 2026.
Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President?
Has everyone recorded their vote? If so, the clerk will take the call. To the wonderfully powerful women of Sigma Gamma Rho Sorority Incorporated, the Senate of Maryland unanimously celebrates your leadership and advocacy here in the state of Maryland. Congratulations. Excellent. Thank you all for visiting with us today. Great to see you, Madam County Executive. right, if we could now recognize the senator from Baltimore City, from the 45th District.
Thank you, Mr. President. And Mr. President, I rise for a very special moment. Just to celebrate a woman, this Women's History Month, that has led our city for over a decade, at this moment. And Dr. S., when I think about who Dr. Santelises is, first and foremost, I think that it starts at home. I think that it starts as a wife. I think that it starts as a mother to her beautiful 3 daughters. And I think that it starts how she wraps her arms around all of our young people across the city of Baltimore. Dr. S., if I could say that I remember our first interactions, I can remember our challenges, I can remember our discussions. Dr. S., I think about the last several years, and I think about so much that what we've been able to accomplish through partnership. Dr. S., you are the longest serving CEO in our nation for any urban jurisdiction, and I salute you for that. I think about 21st century schools and how many folks thought that you wouldn't be successful, but you came out not just holding your head high, but making sure we as a city look very good. Dr. S., I think about COVID-19. And I think about, and as I look at my Senate president, I think about this senator from West Baltimore, and I think about how we knew the challenges that our young people were facing, and at that moment, there was real leadership that was necessary, and how we all stood side by side saying it was time to open the schools. Dr. S., we did not know if this was the right choice or the wrong choice, but we knew that our young people were hurting and we could not stand by and watch that. I say thank you. Dr. S., I think about Fairley Elementary. I think about a school that was sinking and had to do an emergency evacuation over a decade ago. And I think about how we were able to figure that hard puzzle out. And this is the first year that those babies are in that school building, a school building that all children deserve across the state of Maryland. Dr. S., I think about the football stadium that's coming on Hartford and 25th. I think about the pipeline building that you've done with our principals. I think about the teams that you've been able to build out at North Avenue and how they just demonstrate excellence. But all that comes from your leadership. And Dr. S., I think that it's appropriate for us to do this resolution, to give you your flowers while you are here, just to celebrate you in the 10 years that you've gave to the city of Baltimore, but more importantly, how you led across the country. So if I can read the resolution, Mr. President.
Senator, may proceed.
Thank you. Be it hereby known to all that the Senate of Maryland offers its sincerest congratulations to Dr. Sonia B. Santelises, Chief Executive Officer of Baltimore City Public Schools, in recognition of your transformational leadership of Baltimore City Public Schools and your unwavering commitment to advancing educational equity and its excellence. The entire membership extends its best wishes on this memorable occasion and directs this resolution to be presented the 10th day of March 2026.
The clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Senator's chair, in explaining his vote, if we do have literal flowers to provide on behalf of, just want to take a quick moment personally to say thank you to Dr. Santelises. We came together under Dr. Alonso, worked at the school system when she came in as CAO back in, I think, 2008. Is that right? 2008 when we started our work together. We both took little detours along the way and came back. But 10 years ago, in May of 2016, we had a meeting that talked about a school in the district that had been overcrowded for 10 years. We couldn't figure out what to do with it. There was a vacant building next door. No one could figure out how to finance it. And this past week, we just did a ribbon cutting after the leadership, amongst many, many other examples of incredible leadership, to open this vacant building that had been restored and turned into this incredible space in Brooklyn at Marie Fairing Elementary. And it's just promises delivered and kept. And it's just been an honor to work with you as a true and honest leader. I say the 3 hardest jobs: big city mayor, big city police chief, and big city school system chief. And so you have done the work for 10 years. We're so grateful for you. Thank you so much. The clerk will take the call. And now to make it official, Dr. Santelises, the Senate of Maryland unanimously celebrates your 10 years of incredible service to the city of Baltimore and wishes you many great endeavors ahead. Congratulations. Excellent. All right. Do we have any guests? Any guests today? Yes, Senator from Baltimore County.
Thank you, Mr. President. I actually have two groups of guests today that I would like to welcome, and hopefully they are here. One is, colleagues, you may know the Maryland Legislative Jewish Caucus is excited to announce that over 50 high school students from around the state will be shadowing members in the Senate and the House today. This is a fantastic opportunity for Maryland's next generation of change makers to observe the legislative process up close, ask questions, and connect with staff and stakeholders alike. Please join me in welcoming this wonderful group of students. I have today personally Zeke and Abigail. Hopefully they are here and can wave and say hello. The second group that I would like to welcome is the U10 Pikesville Wildcats football team. This group of young folks this fall won the National Division Champions in the 10 and under Mid-Maryland Youth Football Championship for their second year in a row. They are here in the gallery, I hope, with their parents and coaches, and let's give them a warm Senate welcome and a hearty congratulations.
Congratulations. Welcome. Very good. Very, very good. Excellent. Senator from the 29th District.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I have some guests today. If I could get Jim Boland and Denise Stanson, if you guys. So, colleagues in the gallery up top, you're going to see two people that are here representing Southern Maryland. And they represent the Navy Alliance. So they're here supporting all of our Department of Defense, defense contractors throughout Maryland. And so if you see them walking around today, they're going to be here all day just getting the opportunity to go around and meet people. We appreciate you, and if you all could give them a warm Senate welcome. Thank you.
Welcome, welcome. Senator from the 45th.
This is the third time, second bite at the apple, Mr. President. Mr. President, today in the gallery we have the Maryland Alliance for Advocacy for Sickle Cell, a statewide coalition, colleagues, of community organizations, healthcare institutions, advocates, and leaders committed to improving the lives of individuals and families affected by sickle cell. This coalition is a dedicated partnership with such as Christopher Gibson and the Sickle Cell Moya Moya Foundation, Harford County Caucus of African American Leaders, the John Hopkins Sickle Cell Center for Adults, Project Sickle Cell at Mount Calvary Baptist Church of Rockville, Top Ladies in the Top Ladies Distinction, all working collaboratively, Mr. President, to support and uplift families and individuals impacted by sickle cell. I'd also like to recognize the leadership, if I can, Mr. Derek Robinson, the president of the Maryland Sickle Cell Disease Association. Derek is a proud father, Mr. President, of 3 sons, 2 of whom live with sickle cell. I think about my friend, Nakia Kayvon, Nikki, Executive Director of Maryland Sickle Cell Disease Association, also a constituent of the 45th District. Mr. President, if we can give a round of applause right there in the gallery to the Maryland Sickle Cell Advocacy, Maryland Alliance for Advocacy for Sickle Cell. Thank you.
Welcome, and thank you for your advocacy on important advocacy. Terrible disease. Yeah, thank you. All right, any further introductions? Yes, Senator from the 22nd.
Thank you, Mr. President. If I can ask Ms. Kimberly Bodie to stand, please, if you're able. Mr. President, I rise today to recognize a remarkable constituent from my district, Ms. Kimberly Bodie. Kimberly is a woman of deep faith and extraordinary resistance who lives each day with multiple autoimmune diseases, including Raynaud's disease, lupus, and Sjogren's syndrome. Yet despite these challenges, she has chosen not to retreat from life, but to serve others with courage and determination. I first met Kimberly at a lupus walk in Prince George's County in Hyattsville last year, where her story and spirit left a lasting impression on me. I was so inspired that I personally invited her here to Annapolis so that we could recognize her strength and advocacy. Through her work with the Lupus Foundation of America, Kimberly served as an ambassador, advocate, and support group leader, helping bringing awareness and support to others living with lupus. And her advocacy could not come at a more important time. Lupus affects nearly 90% of women, and it disproportionately affects Black women, who are far more likely to develop the disease and suffer its most severe effects. Today, we recognize Kimberly not only for her courage in the face of illness, but for her commitment to lifting others who are fighting the battle the same. Kimberly, thank you for your advocacy, thank you for your strength, and thank you for your example. Colleagues, please join me in giving Ms. Kimberly Bodie a warm Senate welcome.
Welcome. Welcome, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. President. Also, I would like to just recognize her wonderful mom who's here with her, Lucinda Wheaton, Fari Nazaru, and from the Lupus Foundation of America, Leanna O'Connor. Thank you, Mr. President.
Welcome. Welcome to them as well. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for visiting with us today. All right, any further introductions? Any further introductions? If not, so be consider the reading of the journal from the prior legislative day. And on the prior legislative day, if we may, we had a little bit of a faux pas. We meant to journalize the remarks about the 6888 regiment, and we were moving too quickly and didn't. So if there are no objections, we'd ask that we journalize the senator from the capital city's remarks from yesterday. So without objection, so ordered. Let's go ahead and move to the report on the Committee on Finance. And this is report number 13. Clerk will read the first bill.
Senate Bill 348, Senator Jackson, Hospitals and Freestanding Birthing Centers, High-Risk Pregnancies Communication After Discharge, favorable to amendments.
Recognizing the bill sponsor is the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 348, as amended, allows a hospital or freestanding birthing center to contact rather than only call a birthing parent following delivery after a high-risk pregnancy, allowing the facility to utilize other methods of contact to contact a birthing parent. Amendment number 1 is technical. Amendment number 2 strikes changes to the time frame in which the contact must occur and authorizes the alternative method of communication as described. There's no fiscal impact. I move the amendments and the adoption of the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the 2 committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the 2 committee amendments are adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the amended report is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 348 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Senator from the 20th District. Senator may proceed.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Colleagues, if the students from Siena School in Silver Spring are still here, if they could stand to be recognized. It's the 8th grade class is here to watch Democracy in Action. So if you could give them all a warm Senate welcome. Welcome.
Welcome to the Siena School. Welcome. All right, clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 390, Wacomico County Senators, Wacomico County, Class A beer, wine, and liquor license alterations, favorable with 2 amendments.
Recognize the senator from the 37th as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, Senate Bill 390 as amended prohibits the Wacomico County Board of License Commissioners from newly issuing a Class A beer, wine, and liquor license to an establishment that already holds a Class B license. The board may not issue more than 1 Class A license in a councilmanic district. This was an amendment that was put in during the process at the county to prevent additional licenses, to restrict this, to make sure it was just these 3 potential licenses. May not issue more than a total of 3 licenses in the county, and may not issue a license to an establishment with retail floor space of more than 3,500 square feet. Another amendment that was taken at the county to make sure these 3 licenses would not grow beyond what they already are, to maintain their current footprint. Additionally, the bill specifies that the general prohibition against one person holding more than 1 license does not apply to a Class A beer, wine, and liquor license issues, a beer, wine, and liquor license issues before the bill's effective date to a holder of a Class B license. The First Amendment is technical. The Second Amendment establishes the limits on the number, location, and size of licensed premises as described, and reinstates the authorization for a Class A license holder to purchase liquor for retail sale from a wholesaler. There's no fiscal impact. I move the amendments and the adoption of the favorable committee report.
Floor Leader moves for the adoption of the 2 committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, yes, recognize the Senator from Prince George's.
Can we lay this over under the rule?
All right, Senator's motion is in order. The bill and the amendments will lie over under the rule. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 492, Senator Beidel, Health Occupations, Massage Therapy, Advertising, favorable with 1 amendment.
I recognize the Senator from District 5 as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 492 is amended, prohibits a licensed massage therapist, registered massage practitioner, or third party from advertising for massage therapy services, stating that prostitution, escort, or sexual services are available on a website known for advertising prostitution, escort, or sexual services, or 3, prohibited from indicating or implying that sexual activity is part of the massage service. Regulations adopted by the State Board of Massage Therapy Examiners must define specific prohibited language and content and establish procedures for reporting violations. There are amendments. There's one amendment. The amendment strikes provisions requiring practitioners to post their full name and license number on advertisements, but instead requires that if an advertisement includes the practitioner's name, the name must match the name on the license or registration issued by the Massage Therapy Board. And finally, the amendment allows additional time after the bill's effective date to bring physical signs and billboards into compliance. There is no fiscal impact. I move the amendments and the adoption of the favorable committee report.
Floor Leader moves for the adoption of the 1 committee amendment and the favorable committee report. On the amendment, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the 1 committee amendment is adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the amended report is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 492 is hereby ordered printed for 3rd reading. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 562, Senator Guile, State Board of Pharmacy, Prescriber-Pharmacist Agreement, Treatment of Opioid Use Disorders, favorable with 2 amendments.
Recognizing the bill sponsors, the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 562 adds requirements applicable to when a pharmacist enters into a prescriber-pharmacist agreement to treat an opioid use disorder using controlled dangerous substances. A pharmacist may enter into an agreement if the pharmacist, 1, individually registers with both the Maryland Office of Controlled Substances Administration and the Federal Drug Enforcement Agency, 2, completes any required training, and 3, follows the specified protocol. A protocol authorizing CDS drug therapy must require the pharmacist to request relevant data from the Prescription Drug Monitoring Program before initiating or modifying CDS drug therapy. The bill also repeals the requirement for a prescriber who enters into a prescriber-pharmacist agreement to submit a copy of the agreement and any subsequent modifications to the Health Occupations Board that regulates the prescriber. Amendment 1 is technical. Amendment 2 authorizes a licensed certified midwife to participate in a therapy management contract in the same fashion as other authorized prescribers. I move the amendments and the adoption of the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the 2 committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the 2 committee amendments are adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the amended report is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 562 is hereby ordered printed for 3rd reading. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 773, Senator Augustine, Health Occupations, Pharmacists, Vaccination Orders, favorable.
Recognize the senator from Howard and Anne Arundel as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 773 authorizes a pharmacist to order a vaccine for an individual who is at least 3 years old without the pharmacist administering the vaccine. If a vaccine is administered to an individual younger than 18 or ordered for administration by an adult caregiver to an individual younger than 18, the pharmacist must inform the patient, the adult caregiver, of the importance of the visits with the pediatric primary care provider and refer the patient to a pediatric primary care provider when appropriate. This bill is intended to help address the need for vaccines, especially vaccines that recently have been permitted by the FDA for nasal or intranasal use. This is really just specific to the flu vaccine. So folks may have heard of FluMist that have proliferated over the last couple years. That vaccine has been shown to have been proven safe to administer at home for an individual. Currently, our state law does not allow these vaccines to be sent to an individual's home and to be self-administered. This bill will allow nasal vaccines like FluMist that have been FDA approved to be shipped to a patient's home and self-administered by that patient. This will also help with access, particularly in rural locations, where for individuals that might not be able to make their way to a physician's office or a pharmacy, to be able to receive that vaccine at home and self-administer it to themselves. That is the bill. There are no amendments. There's no fiscal impact. Move the adoption of the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves to the adoption of the favorable committee report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the favorable committee report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 773 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 917, Senator Mouts, Health Occupations Practice of Audiology, definition favorable.
Recognizing the bill sponsor is the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 917 clarifies the definition of practice audiology to include the conducting of health screenings and the ordering and performing of in-office non-radiographic scanning or imaging of the external auditory canal related to the auditory or vestibular conditions in the human ear. There are no amendments. There's no fiscal impact. I move the adoption of the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves to the adoption of the favorable committee report. Recognize the senator from the 42nd District on the report.
Thank you, Mr. President. I wonder if I might talk to the floor leader for a moment.
Question for the floor leader. Senator may proceed.
Thank you. So I didn't know about this bill one way or the other. It doesn't fall within my comfort zone, but I had some conversations earlier today and was informed that if this bill passes, Maryland would be the only state restricting a particular healthcare occupation from performing the mandated health screenings required by Medicare. Is that correct?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
I'm sorry, let me do it again. I understand that if this bill passes, Maryland would be the only state restricting a particular healthcare occupation from performing the mandated health screenings required by Medicare. Is that accurate?
I'm not 100% certain about the testimony in committee. I believe that came up. Hold on one second. We get one lifeline, right? I'm going to use my lifeline on that one. Do we get a lifeline?
That's great. Use your lifeline. Poll the audience.
Yeah, we at the committee, we weren't able to verify the veracity of that assertion. It was made at committee, but we do not have a multi-state study on hand at committee. So it was, the allegation was made at committee in testimony, yes. However, it wasn't verified with any study or proof of that.
How about in Maryland? Do we restrict any other healthcare occupation from performing the mandated health screenings required by Medicare?
I believe there's scope of practice in all varieties of practice. There's limitations in every practice.
Right, but among those limitations, do we preclude any other health specialty from performing those mandated health screenings?
I want to be sure I'm going to make sure I'm 100% active and use my second lifeline. So other practices, I don't have specifics on to address that specific question that you're asking. Okay. Which other practice are these limitations? I'm not sure if dentists are allowed to provide health screenings. I don't know if podiatrists are allowed to do health screenings. I know when I go to the podiatrist, I'm never offered to do a health screening. When I go to the dentist, I'm not offered to do a health screening.
Okay, thank you for your answers. I wonder, Mr. President, if I could special order this bill for a day for the purpose of an amendment.
Senators, move special order the bill. Any objections from the committee?
I have one more lifeline, right? just kidding, just kidding. No objection, no objection.
No objections.
Thank
All right,
you.
any objections on the floor? Without objection, we'll special order the bill at the appropriate time tomorrow. All right, let's go, stick with finance, but we're going to go to report number 14. Clerk will read the first bill.
Senate Bill 53, Senator Simon Eyre, Maryland Port Administration, Acquisition of Land in Anne Arundel County, Notice of Public Hearing, favorable with 2 amendments.
Recognizing the senator from Anne Arundel as floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 53, as amended, requires the Maryland Port Administration to provide written notice to the Anne Arundel County delegation when the administration requests written approval from Anne Arundel County to acquire land or interest in land in the county. There are 2 amendments. Amendment 1 adds co-sponsors. Amendment 2 strikes the provisions of the bill as introduced and amends the bill as specified. There is no fiscal impact. I move the amendments and the adoption of the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the 2 committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the 2 committee amendments are adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the amended report is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 53 is hereby ordered printed for 3rd reading. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 428, Senator Augustine, Maryland Medical Assistance Program and Health Insurance Collaborative Care Model, Cost Sharing Prohibition, favorable.
Recognize the senator from Baltimore City as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 428 prohibits the Maryland Department of Health, as well as insurers, nonprofit health service plans, and health maintenance organizations from imposing a co-payment, co-insurance, or deduction requirement on coverage for services provided in accordance with the collaborative care model. There are no amendments. I move the adoption of favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the favorable committee report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the favorable committee report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 428 is hereby ordered printed for 3rd reading. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 473, Senator Heddleman, Public Utilities for Hire Drivers and Transportation Networks Operators, Human Trafficking Awareness, and Private Training Liability, favorable with 2 amendments.
All right. On the senator from the 37th Transportation Network. Recognizes the floor leader.
I lost my shadow, Mr. President. I apologize for the delay. Senate Bill 473 requires an applicant for a local taxi cab driver. Senate Bill 473 requires an applicant for a local taxi cab driver's license, state for hire driver's license, or state transportation network operator license to include in the license application documentation verifying that the applicant completed a human trafficking awareness training program and a human trafficking prevention program, and specifies that a licensed taxi cab driver, for hire driver, or transportation network operator may not be held civilly or criminally liable for reporting or responding in good faith to a suspected incident of human trafficking. There are 2 amendments. Amendment 1 is technical and adds a co-sponsor. Amendment 2 strikes the requirement that a transportation network operator include documentation of completing the training in the license application, and instead prohibits a transportation network operator from using an application to provide transportation network services if the transportation network operator does not complete specified human trafficking training within 30 days. The amendment also allows certain transportation network operators to fulfill the training requirement with existing training. I move the amendments and the adoption of the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves to the adoption of the favorable committee, or 2 amendments in the favorable committee report. On the amendments, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the 2 committee amendments are adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the amended report is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 473 is hereby ordered printed for 3rd reading. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 585, Senator Gazzone, Human Relevant Research Fund, Collection of Contributions, Responsible Entity, favorable.
Recognizing the senator from District 12 as the floor leader.
Thank you. Senate Bill 585 requires the Maryland Department of Agriculture instead of the Maryland Department of Health to collect already required contributions from specified research facilities. As a result, the Secretary of Agriculture instead of the Secretary of Health must distribute the monies collected in this Human Relevant Research Fund administered by the Maryland Technology Development Corporation, or TEDCO. Basically, it moves the administration and collections of this fund from the Department of Health to the Department of Agriculture.
All
There
right.
are no committee amendments. Move the adoption of the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the favorable committee report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the favorable committee report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 585 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 606, Senator McCray, Maryland Easy Pass Commuter Fairness and Transparency Act of 2026, favorable with one amendment.
Recognize the senator from the 22nd as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. This bill requires the Maryland Transportation Authority to submit a report on Easy Pass commuters and discount plans to the Senate Budget and Taxation Committee and the House Appropriations Committee. The report must analyze and provide specified data from calendars 2023, 2024, and 2025, and include recommendations for lowering the amount of unused commuter trips as specified. There is one amendment. The amendment adds co-sponsors. I move the committee amendments and the adoption of the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the one committee amendment and the favorable committee report. On the amendment, recognize senator from District 7.
Thank you, Mr. President. Can I just ask the bill and amendment lie over under the rule only because I've got a bill I'm working on that's going to be in JPR dealing with Easy Pass with regards to the fines that many of us have to work with our constituents, and I just want to see if there's maybe I could tweak this bill, but if not, just give me one day.
All right, well, senator's motion's in order, so the bill and the amendment will lie over under the rule. All right, clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 637, Senator Jackson, Maryland Automobile Insurance Fund, Fund Producer Minimum Commission Rate, repeal, favorable with two amendments.
Recognize the senator from District 8 as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 637 repeals the minimum commission rate of 10% of the total premium that the Maryland Automobile Insurance Fund must pay to an insurance producer that issues insurance policies on the behalf of the fund. There are two amendments. Amendment number 1 is technical. Amendment number 2 sets the minimum commission rate at 5% rather than eliminating the minimum entirely, and additionally prohibits the Maryland Automobile Insurance Fund from paying commission on a policy written directly by the fund. I move the amendments and the adoption of the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves to the adoption of the two committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the two committee amendments are adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the amended report is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 637 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 740, Senator Kramer, Transportation Network Companies Deactivation of Operators, favorable with two amendments.
Recognize the bill sponsor as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, I'm sure all of us are very familiar with Uber and Lyft, but we don't necessarily pay a lot of attention to the drivers when we avail ourselves of their services. The drivers are considered independent contractors. They are not employees. As a consequence, there are limits as to what can be done to provide them with certain protections, and one of the issues that has really been a concern is deactivation policies that take them out of the transportation networks. Many of these drivers are minorities, they're new Americans, and some of the ambiguity that is in the process that they have to live with day to day with deactivation is problematic. The bill before you addresses that issue of deactivation. It helps to provide an outline and a process. And again, the bill before you represents several weeks of work between the drivers and those advocating on their behalf, as well as Uber and Lyft. All parties agreed to the language that is in the bill before you, and there are two amendments. The first is technical. The second amendment strikes the bill as introduced and substitutes the agreement language that removes provisions relating to the Public Service Commission and alters the requirements of the specified deactivation policy. The committee vote was unanimous, and I move the amendments, Mr. President, in the adoption of the favorable committee report.
Floor Leader moves the adoption of the two committee amendments and the favorable committee report. Any discussion on the amendments? Any objections? Without objection, the two committee amendments are adopted. Question now on the amended report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the amended report is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 740 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 803, Senator Bidel, alcoholic beverages, Class 3 wineries and Class 4 limited wineries, bulk wine, favorable with two amendments.
Recognizing Chair of the committee is the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 803 authorizes the holder of a Class 3 winery license to acquire bulk wine from the holder of a Class 4 limited winery license, and authorizes a holder of a Class 4 limited winery license to sell and deliver bulk wine to the holder of a Class 3. There are two amendments. Amendment 1 is technical amendment, authorizes Class 4 limited winery to manufacture and bottle a specified amount of Palmas brandy distilled from wine produced by the same winery, provided that the brandy is less than 80 proof and made from at least 51% Maryland-grown agricultural products, and specifies that all Palmas brandy distilled and bottled by the license holder shall be reported as a distilled spirit for the purposes of the tax general article. Learn something new every day in this job. There is physical impact. I move the amendments and the adoption of the favorable committee report.
Floor Leader moves to the adoption of the two committee amendments and the favorable committee report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the two committee amendments are adopted. Question now on the amended report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the amended report is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 803 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Let's go to, staying on finance, report number 15. Clerk will read the first bill. Uh-oh.
Senate Bill 376, Senator Watson, Digital Assist and Blockchain Technology Task Force Establishment, favorable one amendment.
Floor Leader for, oh yes, I recognize Senator from District 5.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 376 is wise legislation. It establishes the Digital Asset and Blockchain Technology Task Force, staffed by the Office of Financial Regulation within the Maryland Department of Labor. The task force must conduct an analysis of and make recommendations regarding expansion of blockchain technology and cryptocurrency in the state. The report is due by October 1 of 2027. It comes to the governor and to the General Assembly. Amendment 1 adds members to the task force. You may ask, what is blockchain? I'm glad you asked. Blockchain is decentralized, distributed, and a publicly digital ledger used to record transactions across many computers through networks so that the record can be retroactively altered. It operates, and this is key, without a central authority, making it highly secure and transparent. That sounds good, but we definitely want a task force to figure out and be sure we understand it better, how it could be implemented more in the state. Data is stored in what's known as blocks linked together chronologically. Now, you may also ask, because we're going to study cryptocurrency, what is cryptocurrency? Well, it's a digital or virtual currency secured by cryptography operating on a decentralized blockchain network, which we're going to study, that rather than being issued by government or banks. It enables secure peer-to-peer and borderless transactions. Bitcoin is the one people are most familiar with, but there are many others. The key aspects of cryptocurrency is that it operates without a central authority and maintains records across the distributed ledger, which is the blockchain. It exists only in electronic form, not as physical coins or notes. We can talk about how it works, but I think that's going to be part of the task force's job to break that down. Mr. President, I would move the committee amendment and the favorable committee report.
Floor Leader moves for the adoption of the one committee amendment, the favorable committee report. Yes, recognize the minority leader on the amendment.
President, yes, if the floor leader would yield for a question, please.
Sir, may proceed.
It would be my pleasure.
I did notice that there are 2 members from the Senate that will be appointed to this task force by the Senate President. I would imagine one would be probably the sponsor of the bill.
I certainly hope so.
But we also like to see sometimes some bipartisan effort where you have a member of the majority party and a member of the minority party. So I didn't know if the committee discussed that or maybe making a recommendation to the Senate President on who from the minority party would like to serve on this task force.
We didn't discuss names specifically. I would be happy to offer an amendment with a specific name, but maybe we could talk about that offline. But no, we did not discuss a name. But I think it's a great idea.
Well, thank you very much.
And the committee chair, it sounds like she agrees, so that's great.
I see her nodding as well. Well, thank you, Mr. President.
Good. Very good. Thank you, Senators. I think we know who's going on that one. No. All right. All right. On the amendment, any further discussion? Any objections? Yes, Senator from the 26th.
Thank you very much, Mr. President.
The task force is not outside. It's not outside.
Okay. Floor Leader, yield,
yes,
please.
Senator may proceed.
Yes.
Can you one more time explain blockchain?
Well, you see.
No, okay, I'll get it. I'll get it.
Thank you. All right, on the amendment, any further discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the one committee amendment is adopted. Question now on the amended report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the amended report is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 376 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 415, Senator Bidel, Business Regulation, Maryland Franchise Registration and Disclosure Law, Alterations, Franchise Reform Act, favorable with 2 amendments.
Recognizing the bill sponsors, the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 415 tries to modernize our franchise agreements in Maryland, which are very outdated. It alters the time periods within which specified legal actions may be taken by the Securities Commissioner in the Office of the Attorney General or by franchisees under the Maryland Franchise Registration and Disclosure Law. Among other provisions, the bill specifies rights of association for franchisees and requires the Securities Commissioner to establish a pilot program to expedite the review of franchise registration renewal applications. The Commissioner must submit a report on the program by September 30, 2031, and the pilot program sunsets September 30, 2032. Amendment 1 is technical and clarifying. Amendment number 2 confirms the bill to its House cross-file. There was no opposition at the committee hearing. I move the amendments and the adoption of the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the 2 committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the 2 committee amendments were adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the amended report is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 415 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 662, Senator Kramer, Financial Institutions Payment Stablecoin Services Establishment and Regulation, Maryland Stablecoin Act, favorable.
Recognize the Senator from Montgomery County as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. And colleagues, wait a minute, the crypto wizard is walking off the floor right now. And okay, good, he's not bailing out on me. Keeping with the cryptocurrency theme, colleagues, Senate Bill 662 establishes a regulatory framework for payment stablecoin service institutions and state issuers in accordance with the Federal Genius Act of 2025 and requires providers of stablecoin related services in the state to be certified by the Office of Financial Regulation within the Maryland Department of Labor. The bill also lowers the examination fee for a new commercial bank charter from $15,000 to $7,000. There are no amendments. There is no fiscal impact. There was no opposition at the committee hearing. The bill passed unanimously in committee. Mr. President, I move the adoption of the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the favorable committee report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the favorable committee report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 662 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 741, Senator Bidel, Financial Institutions and Activities, Virtual Currency Kiosks, Alterations.
I recognize the chair of the committee as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 741 clarifies the virtual currency kiosk law by explicitly stating that a device may not be a virtual currency kiosk and an ATM. It must be one or the other. The bill also expands the definition of virtual currency kiosk operator to include a person who installs or operates software that enables a standalone automated device to provide virtual currency services in the state. No amendments, no physical impact, no opposition. I move the adoption of the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the favorable committee report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the favorable committee report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 741 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 783, Senator Jackson, credit unions, mergers and consolidations, alteration of voting requirement, favorable.
Recognize the senator from District 8 as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 783 makes a vote to approve a merger by members of a surviving credit union optional instead of mandatory under current law, and makes conforming changes in order to align Maryland law with federal standards. There are no amendments. There is no fiscal impact. I move the adoption of the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the favorable committee report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the favorable committee report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 783 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 784, Senator Jackson, financial institutions consumer credit application of licensing requirements, favorable.
Recognizing the bill sponsor is the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 874 is a clarifying and corrective measure that repeals a provision of law erroneously enacted during the 2025 session, exempting a certain person who acquires a mortgage from licensure. There is no amendment, there are no fiscal impact, and there was no opposition at the committee hearing. I move the adoption of the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the favorable committee report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the favorable committee report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 784 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 893, Senator Guile, business regulation rounding cash transactions authorization, favorable with 2 amendments.
Recognizing the senator from Anne Arundel as floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, the penny is on its way out, and many of our local businesses are left with some uncertainty of how to handle it, as they may not have pennies in order to provide change. Senate Bill 893 is based on model legislation from NCSL. It's an emergency bill that authorizes a merchant to round certain cash transactions and the amount of change due to a customer up or down to the nearest cent divisible by 5. The bill preempts any existing regulations, rules, and ordinances that conflict with the Act. The Secretary of Labor may adopt regulations to carry out the bill's provisions. There are 2 amendments. Amendment 1 is technical and clarifying. Amendment 2 strikes the labor and wage provisions from the bill. There is no fiscal impact. I move the amendments and the adoption of the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the 2 committee amendments and the favorable committee report. Recognizing the minority leader on the amendments.
Thank you, Mr. President. The floor leader would yield for a few questions, please.
Senator may proceed.
First of all, as you were talking about, this is cash rounding, or rounding as merchants are giving change back to customers that pay in cash. Mm-hmm. And it does lay out kind of the model on if the price ends. So this is all about the price, not exactly the change, but the change will work out. If the price ends in a 1 or 2 or 6 or 7, it's rounded down. If it ends in a 3, 4, 8, or 9, it's rounded up.
To the nearest nickel.
To the nearest nickel. I think a lot of businesses are doing this already. Are they allowed to be doing this the way they currently, or do they need legislation in place to allow that?
This is authorizing, so it's a may, not a shall. And it just provides clarity to them so they're not in conflict with any existing consumer protection related measures, so they don't run afoul of anything saying that they have to give back a certain change. It's just to provide them some clarity and comfort when following this practice.
Okay, so you did mention it's a may, not a shall. So merchants can decide to do this themselves? Even if this law passes, merchants can still decide themselves whether they want to do this or not want to do this.
Merchants can decide. If they have exact change, they can still give pennies back. This is just to make sure that if there's any conflicting state law on consumer protection related measures, things of that nature, to ensure that they can do this without running afoul of those regulations.
Okay, but you also said it was to try to avoid confusion. Doesn't this put more confusion on maybe not necessarily the merchant, but the individual that's operating the point of sale, to have to explain to, potentially each customer that they are either rounding or not rounding to the nearest nickel rather than a law being in place that says this is what the General Assembly agreed that the merchants would do in the state of Maryland?
I mean, they're all, alternatively, they'd be in a situation where they don't have exact change in order to give back to them. I mean, this is ultimately to protect our mom and pops and our small businesses and to make sure that they have the ability to, you know, otherwise they might be in a situation where they would have to round up, or I'm sorry, where they'd have to round up and they could potentially lose a lot of money by giving back all this, you know, additional change by rounding up.
Yeah, but I mean, it's not, it's just authorizing language. So as you mentioned, there was model legislation. You know, different states have done different things. Washington allows it, New York requires it, Utah issued guidance, Connecticut advised, and now Maryland is authorizing. Why is there not just being a process put in place so that consumers know what's to occur? Consumers know that this, for instance, if you go and you pay with a credit card sometimes, it'll say right there that this merchant imposes a 3% credit card fee or something like that. It's right there. So when you pay your credit card, you see that fee on it. This is now seems to be up for negotiation when you go to a merchant, that this merchant can decide in some cases, I'm going to round down and just go to the nearest nickel. In some cases, I'm going to round up. But it doesn't seem to be that there is any, this is what is required. It's more just a conversation that's being held, but with no real guidance to the consumer either.
It's authorizing, that's correct. I mean, it'd be great if the federal government had given us greater clarity when they removed the penny from circulation.
Right.
And there could have been a clearer standard among states. And absent that, then states have to do something in order to provide greater clarity to our small businesses so that way they don't run afoul from existing laws.
But that's my point. This doesn't provide any more clarity. This says that you may do it or you may not do it. Clarity would say you have to do this. You have to round down or you have to round up, depending on what the final price is. This is less clarity. This is saying what's already existing. That is, if you go and you buy something for $1.22 and you're supposed to get you give $2 and you're supposed to get 78 cents change, the merchant could do whatever they want. If they want to give you, they can do that. I mean, you're the one that's the recipient of it. If you agree to say, I'll accept 80 cents rather than 75 cents, then that's your agreement with them. This doesn't do anything different. It just says that here's a process that's in place that we've talked about, but it's not saying that this is what has to occur at the point of sale.
This provides them flexibility, and they can still give back exact change if they choose to do so. The vast majority of transactions are electronic. You can still pay by exact amount if it's an electronic transaction. This just provides merchants some flexibility, given that the penny is on the way out, and they don't have pennies in order to give back. It provides them some flexibility so that way they don't run afoul of existing laws.
Okay. Well, I think my point in this, I guess where we're disagreeing, I think the flexibility already exists. I think everybody that's been out here that's paid cash for something has, either had the guy give you, or the person at the POS give you, rounded up or rounded down to 5 cents, and everybody's fine with that. This doesn't do anything more than otherwise get into a conversation that if somebody's not in agreement to them, that the legislature went halfway there and said, well, here's the guidance on doing it, but we're not saying to go ahead and do it. So, again, I think that if we're going to go this far, we should just make it a law and say that they shall do it one way and not the other way, rather than having this kind of conversation that could occur at every point of sale when this happens. And then for the person at the point of sale to say, well, the General Assembly said I can do this if I want to do this.
I mean, I think the issue, though, by what you're saying is that what if they do have exact change? What if they do have pennies? When you're saying they shall do it, this gives them the flexibility in order to do so. I mean, if they have the pennies, they have the pennies in order to give back the change. If you say shall round for cash transactions.
No, the bill says that if it's exact change, it says this does not apply to a transaction for a good or service paid with exact change. So if you paid with exact change, then obviously there's no change to return. If you're getting change back, that's exact. Again, this doesn't go either way. If they have exact change, this is saying that they still may provide you, a nickel up or a nickel down. It doesn't say that they have to pay with exact change. So that's why the point is, I think this is still confusing for people. I think you're going to still put this in position that consumers are not sure what's happening, because it could be different every location. It could be different with every person at a point of sale. One person could come in, one ship can say, hey, I'm going to round down because I want to, and one says I don't have to. There's nothing in here that is saying this has to be done. It is in the same position that I think we're in right now. The other part of this was, again, it says the secretary may adopt regulations to carry out the provision of this title. Even if it said the secretary shall, then at least it would be more clear with what was going to happen. You'd be pushing this back on the secretary, I assume, of labor, that would have to say, here are the guidelines and here's how this is going to work. But the other thing that has occurred here is, for some reason, this is an emergency bill. Some reason that this is needed for the immediate preservation of the public health or safety of the state of Maryland. So you're really not even giving the Secretary of Labor any opportunity to provide any type of regulations on how this would work, or provide any type of guidance to merchants. So I just think that this needed and we discussed in committee, obviously, it needed a bit more work to say, what do we really want to do? And if we're following model legislation, I don't know which state or NCSL did, and I don't recall if they said that this is shall language rather than may language. But with respect to the questions on that, Mr. President, I think this needs to be talked about a little bit more. Can we special order this, and maybe we can talk about it in finance?
Senator is asked to special order. Check with the floor leader.
No.
No?
Senator is opposed to the special order. Question on the table is whether
No, it's fine, Mr. President. We can special order.
Yeah, she's right. All right.
When can we round it up to the nearest
special
Wednesday?
Order. Yes.
Is that all right?
Special order to the nearest Wednesday.
To the nearest Wednesday. To the nearest
all right.
Wednesday.
Thank you very much.
Any objections? Without objection, so ordered. The bill will be special ordered to the appropriate time on Wednesday. All right, let's go to EEE. Go to report number 9. Clerk will read the bill.
Senate Bill 57, Senator Simon Nair, Primary and Secondary Educators, Licenses, and Public Profiles, Notation of Veteran Status, favorable.
Recognize the bill sponsors, the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. This bill authorizes MSDE to establish a process to include a notation of veteran status on a license or public profile of primary and secondary educators. As MSDE establishes the process, applicants may submit documentation of veteran status and consent to the notation and to contact from appropriate executive branch agencies regarding the eligibility of state and federal benefits. If an applicant submits the required documentation and provides the necessary consent, MSDE must include a notation of status on the veteran's license or public profile. There were no amendments, no opposition. I move the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves to the adoption of the favorable committee report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the favorable committee report would be adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 57 is hereby ordered, printed for third reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 263, Senator Brooks, Education Dependent Children of Active Service Members, Advanced Enrollment Procedures, favorable with 2 amendments.
Recognizing the senator from Baltimore County is the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, Senate Bill 263 requires the local school systems to allow a dependent child of an active service member to apply for advanced enrollment in public schools and specifies requirements for advanced enrollment procedures. The Secretary of Veterans and Military Families, in consultation with specified entities, must publish and maintain information on 1, the advanced enrollment procedures, and 2, any assistance and service available to service members regarding the advancement enrollment. There are 2 committee amendments. Amendment number 1 adds co-sponsors. Amendment number 2 requires the Secretary of Veterans and Military Families, in consultation with other specified entities, to publish and maintain information on the Purple Star Schools program and the Interstate Compact of Educational Opportunities for military children, in addition to the advancement enrollment procedures under the bill. I move the adoption of the two committee amendments and the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves to the adoption of the two committee amendments and the favorable committee report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the two committee amendments are adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the amended report is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 263 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 339, Senator Lewis Young, Maryland School for the Deaf, membership of Board of Trustees, alterations, favorable.
Recognized the senator from the 41st District as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. This bill decreases the number of members from the Board of Trustees for the Maryland School of the Deaf from 19 to 13, and it also increases the minimum number of board members that must be deaf from 6 to 7. This bill takes effect July 1st, 2026. There are no committee amendments, there's no fiscal impact, and I move adoption of the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves to the adoption of the favorable committee report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the favorable committee report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 339 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 359, Senator Henson, Child Care Facilities Criminal History Records Check Requirement, favorable with two amendments.
Recognized senator from the 23rd is the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, this bill requires individuals who will have direct contact with children in certain child care facilities to submit a criminal history records check, CHRC, in accordance with current statutory provisions under the Family Law Article. The Maryland State Department of Education must establish a centralized unit for the processing and management of information about these. The bill also alters statutory provisions requiring MSDE to establish probationary employment qualifications for first-time child care teachers in a child care facility that services preschool or school-aged children. Finally, the bill repeals the limitation on the number of deputy state superintendent of schools that may be appointed. There are two amendments. The first one is technical. The second amendment ensures that criminal history records check processed by MSDE apply only to child care facilities that are licensed or registered by MSDE, and establishes a June 30th, 2027 date for MSDE to establish the centralized unit for the processing and management of criminal history records checks for child care services. There are no fiscal impacts. I move adoption of the two committee amendments and the favorable committee report.
All right, floor leader moves to the adoption of the two committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the two committee amendments are adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the amended report is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 359 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 418, Senator Simon Eyre, professional licensing portability members of the Foreign Service and spouses, favorable with two amendments.
Recognize the bill sponsor as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is a 85-page consensus product that was coordinated with 12 different departments, all the health boards, Department of Labor boards, and many others. So this bill authorizes a foreign service member or foreign service member's spouse who relocates to the state due to an assignment or detail to the state and holds a license issued by another jurisdiction to practice under the license for the duration of the assignment and detail within Maryland, if the individual provides specified documentation and satisfies other criteria. If a foreign service member or spouse is authorized to practice under the bill's provisions, the individual may practice only in the discipline and scope of the practice allowed by the license in the other jurisdiction, and the licensing authority in the state may not require another license unless the individual seeks to practice outside the authorized discipline and scope of practice. This bill also makes conforming changes. There were two committee amendments. The first is technical. The second clarifies that a member of a foreign service or their spouse, if they practice their occupation in the state, are subject to the same oversight authority and discipline authority as every other licensee, and makes technical changes. There was no opposition, passed the EEE and Finance Committee unanimously. I move the amendments and the favorable committee report.
All right, floor leader moves to the adoption of the two committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the two committee amendments are adopted. Question now is the amended report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the amended report is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or, oh yes, recognizing the bill sponsor?
Yes,
Has
have one
amendment.
amendment.
Pages will collect and distribute the senator's amendment. All right, Senator, may proceed.
Thank you. So this is just a clarifying amendment on the scope of disciplinary authority to make sure we capture all that would apply to this bill.
All right. Senator moves the amendment. Any, it's from the committee. Any objections from the floor? Without objection, the amendment is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 418 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 629, Senator Kramer, Information Technology, State and Higher Education, Email Requirements, favorable.
Recognized senator from the 27th is the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 629, the bill states that it is the policy of the state that email systems and resources for the state and higher education employees are intended to support state businesses and may not serve as a public forum. The bill also requires that the information technology policy plan and standards in place for state agencies and institutions of higher education to include provisions protecting employee email services from spam, email, other use that does not support state businesses. There are no amendments, no opposition. I ask that you move the favorable committee report.
All right, floor leader moves to the adoption of the favorable committee report. Recognize the minority whip.
Thank you. I just wonder if the floor leader would yield for a question. Please.
All right, Senator may proceed.
Thank you. I'm looking at the bill. I guess what caught my attention, the statement on page, I think it's page 2 here. Yeah, page 2. It is the policy of the state that email systems and resources for state and higher education employees are intended to support state business and may not use as a public forum or may not serve as a public forum. What does that mean, may not serve as a public forum? How are they serving as a public forum now?
Repeat the question. And what line are you talking
I'm talking
about?
about page 2, and it's down on line 14. It's the 14 through 16. Well, really just the bill is making the statement. It's the policy of the state that email systems and resources for state and higher ed employees are intended to support state business, which of course, no objection to that. That's what they're for, but may not serve as a public forum. What's an example of a public forum?
So that particular piece in the legislation was put in place to ensure that folks are not utilizing state IT system to go for or against any particular item.
Well, is it speaking just to the email, or is it speaking to the entire system? I guess my question is, does that mean that if a higher education employee, and if that's high, does that mean every college, university, or does it just mean employees of the Higher Education Commission?
Just emails.
Oh, just emails. Okay. Yes. All right. So okay. I just don't understand how an email would be a public forum. They shouldn't be using their emails to email about a public policy or make statements or sign up for updates, right? Is that what we're talking about?
That is absolutely correct.
Like, don't sign up for Senator Reedy's, newsletter from.
100%.
Is there a penalty provision here for that taking place, or is it just regulatory?
No penalties.
Okay. Okay, is that, and it's because we're getting, I'm assuming looking at the bill, I'm just trying to understand why we're doing the bill. What's the impetus of the bill?
It's just codifying the existing practice.
Okay, have there been problems with just lack of clarity? People don't know what they can and can't do with their state emails, and it's flooding the email system really is the concern?
That's correct.
Okay, all right. I'm just trying to understand. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
No problem.
Thank you. All right, any further discussions on the report? If not, any objections to the report? Without objection, the favorable committee report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 629 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 653, Senator Kagan, State Board of Architects, grounds for discipline requirement, favorable with 2 amendments.
Recognize the bill sponsor as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, sometimes we bring legislation as a result of a personal experience of one of our constituents, and that's what this bill is. Several years ago, an architect friend and constituent had their license fraudulently used by a former associate of his. And I took it to the attention of the Maryland Board of Architects, and they said there was nothing they could do about it. So this is the bill that will give them something to do about it. Prior to getting a permit, the counties will need to verify the credentials to make sure that it's not being fraudulently used, and then the Board of Architects will have the opportunity to do enforcement. There are 2 amendments. One is technical, and the other gives the Board of Architects the option that they may set up a portal in case there wants to be, in case folks want to anonymously or privately report something. It's a very insular community, and that the board then would have the opportunity to investigate. There's 0 fiscal impact. It passed unanimously. I move adoption of the 2 committee amendments and the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the 2 committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the 2 committee amendments are adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the amended report is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 653 is hereby ordered printed for 3rd reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 665, Senator Harris, Office of the Deaf and Hard of Hearing in Maryland Advisory Council on Deaf and Hard of Hearing, renaming, favorable.
Recognizing the senator from the 27th as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 665, Office of the Deaf and Hard of Hearing and Maryland Advisory Council on Deaf and Hard of Hearing. The bill renames the Office of the Deaf and Hard of Hearing to be the Office of the Deaf, Blind, and Hard of Hearing. The Maryland Advisory Council on the Deaf and Hard of Hearing is renamed to be the Advisory Council on the Deaf, Blind, and Hard of Hearing. This bill makes it technical and clarifying changes to the renaming of the office and the council as that we move to favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves to the adoption of the favorable committee report. Any discussion? Any objections? All right, without objection, the favorable committee report is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 665 is hereby ordered printed for 3rd reading. Let's go to report number 10. Clerk will read the first bill.
Senate Bill 215, Senator Simonaire, Veterans and Uniformed Services, Maryland Veterans Trust Fund, application of laws, favorable.
Recognize the bill sponsor as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Last year, we passed a series of bills that modernized our military laws. Of course, the bills that were going through last year couldn't get those benefits because that was not in law yet. So this is a follow-up for the bills that passed last year that did not get modernized, and this just modernizes those sections of law. With that, there were no opposition, no fiscal impact, and I move the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the favorable committee report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the favorable committee report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 215 is hereby ordered printed for 3rd reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 237, Senator Kagan, Election Law, Presidential Elections, Selection and Voting, favorable.
Recognizing the bill sponsor as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, as you know, when we vote for President of the United States, we're not actually casting our ballot that's going to be counted to elect the next President of the United States. It leads to the antiquated Electoral College, and it's there that the electoral votes are officially enumerated and that we then have a new president and vice president. In our divisive times, and with threats against electors and others, there have been an increasing number of what's called faithless electors. And so this would allow us to join 24 other states and DC because we have no remedy on that yet. So this just says that if someone votes for a candidate who is not the will of the majority of Maryland voters, that elector would be replaced and a substitute elector would be put into place and cast the ballot. This was passed unanimously in the Senate. There's no fiscal impact. There were no amendments. Move adoption of the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves to the adoption of the favorable committee report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the favorable committee report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 237 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 371, Senator Carrozza, Water Pollution Control Discharge Permits, Concentrated Animal Feeding Operations, favorable with 2 amendments.
Recognized senator from the 38th is the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 371 is an emergency bill. It repeals a requirement that a person hold a concentrated animal feeding operation or CAFO discharge permit issued by the Maryland Department of the Environment before beginning construction on any part of a new CAFO. There are 2 committee amendments. The first amendment is technical. Amendment number 2 provides that if the general discharge permit for animal feeding operations is administratively extended, MDE may authorize a person to begin construction on any part of a new animal feeding operation under an approval process established by the department. It ensures that all applicable laws and regulations for the construction and coverage would still apply under this process established by the Maryland Department of the Environment, including site plan review and public notice. The bill passed the committee unanimously. I move for a favorable adoption of the 2 amendments and a favorable report on Senate Bill 371.
Floor leader moves the adoption of the 2 committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the 2 committee amendments are adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? Any objection? Without objection, the amended report is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 371 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 431, Senator Brooks, Fish and Wildlife Endangered and Threatened Species and Migratory Birds Regulation List Petitions Essential Habitats and Takings, favorable with 3 amendments.
Recognized senator from District 10 is the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, Senate Bill 431 makes changes to the state endangered and threatened species law and provisions governing the irreplaceable natural area programs. Specifically, the bill clarifies provisions governing listing and delisting species as endangered and threatened species. It authorizes the designation of essential habitat for endangered and threatened species. It establishes restrictions on the taking of certain migratory birds and requires the Department of Natural Resources to review and update regulations carrying out the Irreplaceable Natural Area Program as specified. There are 3 committee amendments. Amendment number 1 is technical. Amendment number 2 authorizes the Secretary of Natural Resources to adopt management protocol for designated essential habitats. And amendment number 3 provides that in the event of certain federal protections for black vulture are removed, DNR must adopt regulations or authorizing the taking of black vultures in a similar manner with the same authorization as a deprivation permit issued by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Services. I move the favorable committee. I move the amendments and the favorable committee reports.
Floor leader moves to the adoption of the 3 committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, recognized senator from the 37th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I apologize for just picking up this legislation. I had a question for the floor leader.
Before to yield, senator may proceed.
So thank you for your explanation of the amendment and the legislation. Is this specifically deal with birds, with birds?
Yeah, the amendment number 3 deals with black vultures, and the unlike the turkey vulture, the black vultures are much more aggressive. They love, I guess we would say, the soft tissue. And one of the complaints by the farmers that they'll attack the livestock, especially newborns, and they will go for the eyes and other soft tissue, and they are very hazardous to farmers. Yes.
Specifically, I had a question about fish. Does this cover fish, specifically eels?
Eels. This specifically, hold on a sec. I think, hold on a second.
Mr. Floor Leader, would it be possible to just special order this bill for one day to take a further look at it, just to make sure there aren't a number of other questions and things like that? Would that be okay?
That'd be fine, yes. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Oh, you're quite welcome.
I'll get back to you.
All right, without objection, or excuse me, the senator's moved to special order the bill. No objection from the committee, any objection from the floor. Without objection, the bill will be special ordered to the appropriate time tomorrow. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 443, Senator Carrozza, Local Board of Elections, Board Council Qualifications, favorable.
Recognize Senator bill sponsors the floor leader.
Thank you. Senate Bill 443 is an emergency bill. It modifies a provision that authorizes a local board of elections to appoint or retain an individual as counsel. The bill modifies the provision by requiring that the individual be a registered voter of the state rather than a registered voter of the local board's county. There were no committee amendments. I move for favorable adoption of committee report, Senate Bill 443.
All right, floor leader, move for the adoption of the favorable committee report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the favorable committee report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 443 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 553, Senator Augustine, Commission to Advance Lithium-Ion Battery Safety in Maryland, Reestablishment, favorable one amendment.
Recognizing the senator from the 35th as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 553 reestablishes the Commission to Advance Lithium-Ion Battery Safety in Maryland. In accordance with recommendations contained in the Commission's 2025 report, the bill expands the mandate of the Commission to include battery risk at the Port of Baltimore, roads, rails, and tunnels throughout the state, the impacts of the battery risk on insurance providers and insurance coverage availability, and the integration of pending federal regulations and emerging third-party standards. The bill also expands the Commission's membership to include representatives with expertise in those subject areas. There's one committee amendment. The amendment adds a representative of the Towing and Recovery Professionals of Maryland to the Commission. I'd like to move the committee amendment and ask for adoption of the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves to the adoption of the one committee amendment and the favorable committee report. On the amendment, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the one committee amendment is adopted. Question now on the amended report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the amended report is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 553 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Let's go to budget and taxation. All right, this is report number 6. Clerk will read the bill.
Senate Bill 48, Chair, Budget and Taxation Committee, Education, Public School Construction, Alterations, favorable with two amendments.
Recognize the majority leader as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 48 is a departmental bill that, number one, repeals the requirement that the Interagency Commission on School Construction approve projects that comprise 75% of the preliminary school construction allocation before December 31st of each year. Number two, it requires the IAC to establish an appeals process for projects that were not approved as a part of the annual 90% round of approvals. And number three, clarifies conditions under which the state may require reimbursement of debt service for school buildings. Number four, alters conditions under which the state superintendent must review and approve school construction projects. Number five, alters various reporting requirements. Number six, clarifies practices relating to the IAC's maintenance effectiveness report and statewide facilities assessment. Number seven, updates statutory terminology to be consistent with standard IAC usage, and there are two amendments. First amendment is technical. The second amendment replaces school buildings with school facilities, increases various cost thresholds, strikes the provision of the bill that authorized the IAC to adopt regulations on eligibility for state funding for school construction projects and systemic renovation projects, requires the IAC to submit a November, December, and January status report to each local jurisdiction, and clarifies the frequency of the statewide facilities assessment. I move adoption of the 2 committee amendments and the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the 2 committee amendments and the favorable committee report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the 2 committee amendments are adopted. Question now on the amended report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the amended report is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 48 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. All right, let's go to judicial proceedings, calendar number 9. Clerk will read the first bill.
Senate Bill 16, Senator Sidnor, Child Support Earnings Withholdings Limits, favorable with 2 amendments.
Let's see if. All right, committee's moved to special order the bill to the end of the calendar. Any objections? Without objection, so ordered. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 38, Chair, Judicial Proceedings Committee, Vehicle Laws, Ignition Interlock System Program, required participation.
Recognizing the vice chair as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. This departmental bill specifies that an individual must participate in the Ignition Lock System program as a condition of modification of a suspension or revocation of a license or issuance of a restricted license if the individual violates an alcohol restriction imposed under Title 16. There are no committee amendments, Mr. President. I move the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the favorable committee report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the favorable committee report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 38 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 101, Senator Bailey, Higher Education Loan Repayment and Scholarship for Correctional Officers, favorable with 1 amendment.
Recognize the senator from District 1 as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, Senate Bill 101 as amended. This bill expands the eligibility of the Maryland Police Officers and Probation Agents Scholarship Program and the Maryland Loan Assistant Repayment Program for police officers and probation agents to include correctional officers. Correctional officers are subject to the same eligibility requirements and service obligation requirements established under current law for police officers and probation agents. There is 1 committee amendment. It adds co-sponsors. I move the adoption of the favorable committee with 1 amendment.
Floor leader moves to the adoption of the 1 committee amendment and the favorable committee report. On the amendment, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the 1 committee amendment is adopted. Question now on the amended report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the amended report is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 101 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 172, Senator Muse, Corporations and Association, Methodist Churches, Trust, Requirements, Repeal, and Disaffiliation, favorable.
Recognize the senator from the 26th District as the floor leader.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. This is a bill that we passed out last year, 46-1. It repeals provisions of existing law that require all assets owned by any Methodist church to be held in trust for the United Methodist Church and subject to the discipline, usage, and ministerial appointments of the United Methodist Church. And, number 2, it authorizes a local church to disaffiliate from the United Methodist Church and retain ownership of its property, and includes provisions related to required reimbursements to the United Methodist Church by disaffiliating, that's disaffiliating with the church. What we did, Mr. President, we heard the concerns of the Methodist Church, and their concerns were, what happens to what that particular church may owe us? So we put the amendment in that says, whatever they owe you, as long as you put it in writing, they're required to pay you back before that happens. It authorizes a local church to disaffiliate from the United Methodist Church, again, and retain ownership of its property. Now, the clause that we're trying to change is the one that says this property is held in trust by the United Methodist Church, not owned, but held in trust, because all of these churches still have their deeds. And so it said held in trust. But when they had their past conference, and that is the general body of the church, they speak for all Methodists everywhere, they then said you have the right to disaffiliate. You have the right to leave. many churches began to leave. And because, this is my opinion, because many of those churches left, they then came back and changed it and said, if you want to leave, you have to pay up to half of the of what your building is worth. Now, what that did, it stopped churches that wanted to do what they wanted to do, because these small churches couldn't raise $2 or $3 million. It also gave them a time limit that was a deadline that was impossible to reach. So this is simply a bill. It's a bill about churches being able to disaffiliate and worship as they please. I will add this: not only they're closing. Here's the real problem: many churches are being closed and sold. These churches, some of them as old as 1800s, 1700s, they're closing these churches. They're taking all of the money for a church that these folks have worked and have the father, grandfather, great-grandfather. They even take the dishes. They even take the cups, and they take, they want the pastor's robes and all that sort of thing. That's kind of ridiculous, because they shouldn't be penalized, number one, if they choose that there's a doctrinal difference, and doctrinal difference does not refer to social issues, they refer to religious issues. For example, if you say that Jesus isn't Lord, and that's fine, they can say that, but if they begin to say he's not Lord, then there's a real doctrinal difference, and one should not be punished for what they believe and how they want to worship. And that's what this trust clause that we're trying to repeal, that's what it did. So we're asking for a repeal of that, so that for all of these churches that are now being held hostage by what they believe because of this financial obligation that wasn't put in place first. Lastly, I'll say this. When it said the property is held in trust, the moment they said disaffiliating is okay, you can leave, then it made that statute almost moot. It was a moot issue now, because all the property is not held in trust if they say you can disaffiliate and leave if you want. So that's really the crux of this bill, and I move for a favorable report.
All right, floor leader moves to the adoption of a favorable committee report. Recognize the senator from the 42nd District.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. President, could I ask some questions of the floor leader, please?
Floor to yield. Senator may proceed.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Floor Leader, as I've read this bill over the weekend in more detail than I had previously, I've concluded it would, as a matter of law, allow a local church affiliated with the United Methodist Conference to disaffiliate from the conference and retain ownership of its church building. In order to disaffiliate and retain ownership of its church building, the local church would merely have to reimburse the parent church for any money contributed to the local church by the parent church for the acquisition, maintenance, and improvement of the church building. Am I correct in that?
That is correct.
Okay, so as I understand it, if this bill passes, any local church currently affiliated with the United Methodist Conference will be able to disaffiliate and retain its church building, provided that it takes care of the required reimbursement, correct?
That is correct.
So this bill will apply retroactively and will apply to existing local churches. It will not merely apply prospectively to local churches, which in the future affiliate with the conference. It will apply retroactively to cover existing churches. Correct on that?
Which is what they did in their own law. Now remember, it was policy, not state law back in 1953 when they merged. It was policy. And the policy was that it's held in trust. But the moment 4 years ago or so, in their general conference, I think it was 4 years ago, in their general conference where they set the law for the Methodist Church, they then said you can disaffiliate. And it too goes back to the very beginning. So it's not just prospective, it is.
Gotcha. Okay. Are you aware that the Maryland Attorney General issued an opinion last year discussing the constitutionality of a bill that was identical to this bill?
I am, and I have the formal opinion from the House when it was first introduced. I have that from the Attorney General.
Right. So I read the opinion this weekend, and here's what the Attorney General wrote about that identical bill. It said the bill would permit local Methodist churches to retain ownership of local church property upon disaffiliation. To the extent that this provision would apply retroactively or would control property disposition, notwithstanding the existence of a trust clause in a deed, conveyance, charter, or articles of incorporation, or any trust obligations imposed by the Book of Discipline of the United Methodist Church, it is likely unconstitutional. By legislatively requiring that local churches be allowed to retain ownership of local church real property in certain circumstances, contrary to the United Methodist Church's established method of local churches holding property in trust for the parent church, as expressed elsewhere, such as in the Book of Discipline, deeds, etc., it is my view that a court would likely find that the new proposed bill violates the Constitution and Article 36 of the Declaration of Rights. So that's what the Attorney General said. Okay. And my question to you is, since this bill is identical to last year's bill, have you any reason to believe the Attorney General has changed his mind?
Well, let me read this opinion from the Attorney General.
When was it issued?
This was issued March 4th, 2024. That's
2 years
when it
ago.
was issued. Yes.
Well, we have this opinion I just read from last year about the identical
Well, then
bill.
they're saying two different things, and I guess because they are, of course, like a lot of things that we pass here, we know it's going to get challenged in court, but this says you have inquired about the constitutionality, and pardon me for reading it from my phone, they tried to send it down, and I'll give you this copy of HB 1382, which proposes repeal sections 5-326 and 5-327. He says then section 536 and 5327 were added to the Maryland Code in Chapter 43 of the Acts of 1953. That's when the first marriage and set is hold in trust. The provisions were moved to their current location in the corporations and associations article as part of the code revisions process in 1976. He says, so this office has advised that these provisions did not violate the First Amendment to the United States Constitution. Letter of advice to the Honorable Donna M. Stifler, and it says, for these same reasons that the adoption of these provisions in 1953 did not offend the First Amendment, your proposal to repeal them does not offend it either. Repeal of the provisions does not violate the rights of any local church of the United Methodist Church to freely exercise their religion as they choose. Similarly, to appeal it would not be unconstitutional.
Okay. Are you familiar with the bill that was introduced in 2024?
Very much so.
That the Attorney General was opining on?
Yes.
Was that bill identical to today's bill?
It was by Delegate Fisher who put that in. The only thing that's not the same is this, which will make the bigger difference, is that they get to disaffiliate by paying a certain amount of money. So what the amendment said in response to that was that as long as you pay your indebtedness, you're able to disaffiliate.
So, but my point is, the bill that the Attorney General was opining with respect to in 2024 was not identical to this bill, correct?
The only difference is the amendment. It's the same bill. It's the amendment that made the difference in this year's bill that wasn't in last year's bill.
Okay, let me come back to my original question. Are you aware that the Attorney General has changed his mind with respect to this year's bill when he opined last year that the identical bill was unconstitutional? Has he changed his mind? Does he believe that this bill is now constitutional, or does he still have the same opinion that this bill is unconstitutional?
Well, if you can do opinions based on how you feel and change it and say last year this is what it is and say this year is what it is not, then I would ask us to pass the bill and let them fight it out in court. We have two different opinions, and I don't know the question that was asked. I do know the question that we asked. I do not know how the delegate there framed that issue or said it according to what he thought it was, that he got that answer. We were specific in what we said, and I'll just say this. I'm a former professor of United Methodist history. I know the history. I've taught it many years. There is no way that this would be unconstitutional, because it does infringe on First Amendment rights. It says because you believe something, you cannot exercise, you cannot talk, you cannot go buy it, or you can't worship the way you want, and if you want to, here's what we're going to charge you to do it. That's what we're trying to settle.
Okay, let me change the subject briefly. So isn't it correct that the very issue addressed by this bill, namely whether a local congregation of the United Methodist Church can disaffiliate from the mother church and retain ownership of its church building, is currently the subject of litigation in the Maryland courts? Isn't that true?
It's in litigation in courts all over the nation, yes.
Well, I'm talking about Maryland in particular.
Maryland, there are local churches that have it in court, yes.
Right. So I understand that 38 Methodist congregations filed a lawsuit in the Circuit Court for Anne Arundel County seeking to obtain a determination that they could disaffiliate while retaining their church buildings. That's true, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. I further understand that the Circuit Court for Anne Arundel County granted a summary judgment in that case in favor of the mother church against the 38 disaffiliating congregations. That's true too, isn't it?
That is true, but it is based on what the statute said, not what the denomination said. You are now able to do it. If the parent church, the mother church, says you're able to do it, and they don't change the statute, that's what I believe it is. It is our job to do just that.
All right, but my understanding is that the basis for the court's grant of summary judgment was the same basis cited by the Attorney General.
In your
namely,
opinion,
that the Constitution protects the rights of the parent church in these circumstances, correct?
Well, my opinion says just the opposite. And again, I want to say, I don't know how they framed it over there, but I knew how to frame the question over here. So if they framed it differently, I can't speak to that. I can only say if we have an Attorney General who is kind of confused about the issue, let the courts deal. I think, Mr. President, we need to pass this, let the courts deal with it, do as we did last year, pass 46-1. And I understand.
Two final questions, if I could.
Okay.
So I further understand that the decision of the Anne Arundel County Circuit Court was appealed to the Maryland Appellate Court, and that oral argument in that case occurred just 2 months ago in January. The court hasn't yet rendered its decision, but this is an actively pending case currently in the Appellate Court of Maryland, right?
Correct.
And finally, I guess to sum up, this bill represents an attempt to do an end run around the Maryland judiciary and to do by statute to try to do an end run around whatever decision the judiciary might come to in their case?
Again, that's the opinion you have. Here's the opinion I have, and I would hope that they're not in the business of just changing their opinions every year. So this was the opinion that we've been operating off of. You mentioned, and in terms of the courts, we're getting different decisions from all over the country. For example, in Georgia, over 70 churches were allowed to leave, and it was done by the appeals court. There have been many that have been that they have ruled that way. North Carolina, Georgia. Now we rule that way if that is a ruling in Maryland. So one judge says one thing, one will say another. I'm asking, Mr. President, that if there is a problem that the court can change or will deal with and give their verdict based on what we're saying, that we will allow this bill to pass, because we've allowed many bills to pass in which people have said, I understand it's a constitutional issue. But you know what? Because of what we believed here, we passed it anyway. Many of the legislative bills were sent directly to court, and we knew they were going to court, but people were confused about it. I think here in the legislature, if we understand the real issues and what's happening to people in churches where the church does not have much because the membership doesn't have much. Poor black churches, poor white churches, Latino, those are the ones. Large churches can pay $2 or $3 million to get out. Smaller churches cannot. And just as there has been different of opinions on different legislation, I'd like for this legislation to pass and let them do. Particularly since we have said we're willing to make you whole financially, no matter what. But we too, now let me remind you of this. Every congregation pays at least 32% of its operating bill. That means the offerings that they put in the plate, 32% yearly to the United Methodist Church. And there was a question asked of one of our colleagues when they came in. They said, well, what have you done for these churches? Have you put a roof on? Have you put a furnace in? Have you done blah, blah, blah? In light of the fact that we are paying, that the churches are paying you to stay here. And I believe it took even at 2 years, and he still hasn't gotten it. We asked him at the last hearing, what justifies the fact that the parishioners have built the building? You didn't build it. The parishioners have put the roof on the building. Parishioners have done everything, and including paying you. They have done all of that, and they still can't respond to say what they have done for those churches. So it's based on.
So, my good friend, thank you. Thank you for your answers to my question.
And I appreciate your asking. My seatmate.
Mr. President.
All right. Thank you, Senator. Recognize.
Who I'm going to bug from now on.
All right, Senator.
Go ahead.
Senator from Minority Whip on the favorable report.
Yes, thank you. Just a couple of questions to the floor leader, just for clarification.
Senator, may proceed.
Yep. So you talked about the impetus for this has been a feeling of disaffection based on some of the changes at the overall denominational level versus how some of these churches feel about doctrine and theology.
Doctrine, theology, right. Nothing about social issues, in my opinion, because most of them are saying, and I don't know how much I can tell the floor. For example, we believe that the Bible is the Word of God. Now, if they come back and say, now we've changed our minds and we don't believe that, then those churches are able to say, okay, we're not going to change what has always been doctrine of the church. We're not going to change the reason that we became Methodist was because we believed in that. And now that you've changed it, we want the right to, yes.
There's room for different interpretations, but
Correct.
You can't get, right, exactly, understood. I was looking at the bill, so I wasn't clear from last year, and it's reminding me, so it's not just that they get to leave free and clear, correct? Because that would be wrong.
It started out that way. The mother church said, you can disaffiliate, and you can, and churches begin to leave. On the Eastern Shore, there were many churches that left, which led the United Methodist Bishop here to say, or the board, I shouldn't say the bishop, the Board of Trustees came back after they were leaving to say, wait a minute, not for free, you can leave, but this is how much you now have to pay on your bill.
So what's your, thank you, so what the bill does, the floor leader's bill, what's your, there's a compromise here, is to say you've got to reimburse for things that the denomination put into the building or put into the property?
Yes, because the denomination in our hearings raise issues of, financial issues of what a church may owe them and what they've given to the church. This changes it with what I believe is a compromise. You can now leave, but not for $1, $2, or $3 million. You can leave based on paying the indebtedness that the Methodist Church can prove that you owe them.
Can I ask one final question? Why it was I think I voted for this last year, and I'm supportive of the idea. I am concerned, though constitutionality is certainly an interesting question. Why do we have any of this in our law at all? And would it have been better to just strike this whole statute, or did we have to do something to rectify the situation?
That's what I'm trying to do. If you remember, and some of you remember who were on the Finance Committee at that time, and even judicial proceedings, when they looked at this, Governor Mandel signed it into law. He then came down to the committee and said it was the worst thing I've ever done. He came in person, and it's on written record to say that. It was put in statute when the General Conference, or in this case, the Baltimore Annual Conference, sent, lobbied people to put that into, like we do everything, had lobbyists and lobby people to put that into the statute. And the governor himself came down and said it was wrong, that it infringed upon freedom of religion, freedom of speech, and I agree with him.
It just feels like it should be a contract, not between parties, not so much in state law. But
that's
but
correct.
I appreciate the answers, and I think hopefully it's a good compromise. We'll see what the courts say, but thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. And when we look at what they've done, in reality, we say, well, we should not oppose the courts, but the statute before us is a statute that robs people of their freedom of religion, freedom of choice, without being punished. That's why we need to take it out and let the congregations and let the conferences decide what to do, but not by this statute. So for that reason, again, I urge a favorable report. Thank you for your
Senator.
questions.
All right, recognized Senator from District 6.
Just one thing, Mr. President.
Question for the floor leader?
Thank you, Mr.
Senator, may
Mr.
proceed.
Yes, sir. Mr. President, just a question, because I know most denominations and even independent churches have their bylaws.
That's correct.
And those bylaws are honored by not just the pastor or by a board, but by the congregation itself.
That's correct.
So just following up, because I'm learning a little bit here and never seen something like this in the Senate floor, how could we not follow through with bylaws of a church to making sure that they follow those laws and honor and doing it that way instead of this way?
You mean of the particular congregation?
Yes, sir.
The particular congregation, by their own board of trustees, should have the right to make decisions for a church that they paid for property that they own, for cemeteries where their ancestors are buried in. They should be able to make that decision. That's what this bill is trying to do.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. All right, any further discussion of the report? Any further discussion? Any objections to the report? Without objection, the favorable committee report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 172 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 354, Senator Kagan, Business Regulation, Charitable Organizations, Audit and Review Thresholds, favorable.
Recognize the senator from the 42nd District as the floor leader.
Sorry, Mr. President. Senate Bill 354 increases the minimum gross income amounts from charitable contributions, above which a charitable organization must include a certain audit or review with a registration statement. The bill increases the threshold for an audit from $750,000 to $1 million, and for a review from $300,000 to $500,000. The bill further authorizes the Secretary of State to accept certain documentation in place of an audit or review in connection with the charitable organization's registration statement. If the charitable contributions do not exceed $500,000 and amount to 20% or less of the total gross income of the charity. There were no committee amendments to this bill. There was no opposition to the bill. The vote of the committee was unanimous. I hereby move the adoption of the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves to the adoption of the favorable committee report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the favorable committee report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 354 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 819, Senator Hayes, Judicial and REM Tax Foreclosure Notice Requirements, favorable.
Recognize the senator from the 30th District as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. This bill requires that a county or municipality, when filing a complaint for an in-rem foreclosure action on specified vacant property, serve the complaint on each interested party in accordance with the Maryland rules. This requirement replaces an existing requirement that the county or municipality, within 5 days after filing the complaint, send notice and a copy of the complaint to each interested party by first-class mail and certified mail, postage prepaid, return receipt requested, bearing a postmark from the U.S. Postal Service. The bill takes effect on June 1st, 2026. There are no committee amendments, and the vote was unanimous. Move for adoption of the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the favorable committee report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the favorable committee report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 819 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. If we could go back to the Senate Bill 16 that was special ordered, clerk would read the bill.
Senate Bill 16, Senator Sidnor, Child Support Earnings Withholding Limits, favorable with 2 amendments.
Recognizing Chair of the committee is the floor leader.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I ask that this bill be special ordered to the appropriate time tomorrow.
All right, floor leaders move that special order the bill to the appropriate time tomorrow. Any objections? Without objection, the bill and the amendments will be special ordered to the appropriate time tomorrow. All right, let's go to calendar number 10. Clerk will read the first bill.
Senate Bill 140, Senator West, Criminal Law Benefits Exploitation, favorable with 1 amendment.
Recognizing the bill sponsor is the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. As amended, Senate Bill 140 generally prohibits a person from committing the crime of benefits exploitation. Benefits exploitation is using fraud, deception, or coercion to appropriate the governmental benefits of another person. A violator would be guilty of a felony or misdemeanor depending on the aggregate value of the money or other goods or services involved. On conviction, the violator is subject to a range of penalties that also depends on the aggregate value of the money or other goods or services involved. There was 1 amendment which strikes the original penalty provision and substitutes a graduated penalty provision as I just described. The committee can pass this bill unanimously. I hereby move the adoption of the amendment as well as the favorable committee report.
Is this not covered in common law?
Well, that's look into. This puts it, mostly we have moved the common law crimes into statutes. There are very few common law crimes left that are not now, have not been the subject of statutory enactments.
Interesting. All right, thank you. All right, floor leaders move the adoption of the 1 committee amendment and the favorable committee report. On the amendment, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the 1 committee amendment is adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the amended report is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 140 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 160, Chair, Judicial Proceedings Committee, Public Safety, Licensed Firearms Dealers, Notification regarding potential compromise of security features, favorable with 2 amendments.
Recognized Chair of the committee is the floor leader.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. As amended, this departmental bill requires a licensed firearm dealer to notify the Secretary of State Police within 24 hours after the dealer has knowledge that there's been a burglary, attempted burglary, or robbery, or theft involving a firearm or ammunition at the premises on which the dealer operates or where the firearms are stored. It also requires a notification if a specified security feature has been compromised. Mr. President, there are 2 committee amendments. One is technical. Amendment number 2 strikes the provisions of the bill that establishes a new reporting requirement specified in the bill summary. I move for the adoption of the 2 committee amendments and the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves the adoption of the 2 committee amendments to the favorable committee report. On the amendments, recognize the minority leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. The floor leader would yield for questions.
Senator may proceed.
Specifically on the amendments, I think that there was some opposition. Did the amendments clarify their opposition on some of the ambiguity of the bill?
I think so for the reporting piece, but it's one of the points of contention was that this report that the bill is now requiring to go to the state police is already required to go to the federal government. It's already required to go to the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms and Explosives.
Right.
ATEF or ATF. So it's
E at the end now.
Yeah, exactly right. But because the Maryland State Police are the ones that regulate these FFLs, they want to know if a requirement, if a security feature that's required for their operation has been breached within 24 hours, since they're the ones responsible for regulating this industry in Maryland.
Okay, so I appreciate that because you did answer my next question, that local law enforcement, ATFE, already required to be notified.
That's correct.
Okay, so this just adds 1 layer, additional with the state police.
Correct, because it's their responsibility to do those
inspections.
Exactly right.
Just, okay, and then just again, a process. Is it truly notifying the Secretary of the State Police himself, or is there the Secretary's office, or what is the requirement specifically?
I don't know. Let me look at the language of the bill. I know it's not the Secretary himself or herself. It can be the designee.
It can be.
Yes.
Okay. So as long as there's then some type of documentation or tracking that the licensed firearm dealer notified the office of the secretary, or that there will be some kind of guidance given to who somebody would notify to make sure that that box has been checked.
That's correct. They'll promulgate guidance to make sure that there's clear guidance around how to report.
That was my question, so thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator. Recognize the Minority Whip.
Mr. President, if Florida would yield for additional follow-up.
Senator may proceed.
Just in follow-up on my colleagues' questions. So there was a concern in the opposition about, one was the clarifying any relevant type of event, which you've clarified in the bill about what exactly we're talking about. That's inclusive then, that it makes it clear it has to be this list of things that happen in the bill. So not did somebody tap the side of the building with a car or something like that, but this is a legitimate, that's what's spelled out on the bill as amended, correct?
That's correct. You remember a few years ago, the then former Speaker of the House passed a bill that required certain security requirements for the FFLs to have. This just clearly lays out exactly what those are, what those elements are in the statute.
Okay. If I guess I'm asking, how often would it happen that you'd have something like this happen and they wouldn't report it, or they're not currently required to report it to the state police? Is that the problem?
The statute or the bill says if they knew or should have, so if they have knowledge of it, then they have to report.
I guess I'm just surprised that they wouldn't report it already, but they might report to local law enforcement about a break-in, correct, but not state police?
That's correct, and they're required to report to the ATF.
Which they probably know to do. So this will just add to the reporting. They got to send. Is it going to be the same report they send to the ATF they send to state police, or
similar report, just a notification that, hey, there's been a compromise in one of our security features, or something's been lost or stolen.
Okay, and then finally, 24 hours. What happens if a FFL, obviously concerned, I know these guys are it's their business, so it's their business to know what goes on, but what's the penalty if they don't notify, or if they notify in 72 hours or something?
It's not there is a potential of $1,000 civil penalty.
Okay, but that's not like the second you hit 25 hours, there's $1,000. It's
some flexibility.
Subject to flexibility. Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Senator. Question, Senator from District 4.
Thank you, Mr. President. Floor leader would just yield for a quick question.
Senator, may
following
proceed.
Up. Real quickly, my apologies. Just following up on what the senator said, as these locations are not always located along state routes, would not fall within the direct purview of a call for response, a call for service, isn't it normal procedure that they have to notify the local law enforcement if there's been a breach, like if their facility's been broken into?
That's correct, yes.
So much like we do right now when we do a handgun search through MSP, Maryland State Police, when law enforcement recover a handgun to verify, they'll do a search through the MSP or NCIC. I guess why would we add an extra layer onto the owner instead of just having local law enforcement refer their report to the state police gun?
Yes, thank you, Senator. I mean, this is a departmental bill. State police wants this, and it was their testimony is that because they are responsible for doing those periodic checks and they're responsible for licensing those FFLs, they want to know right away if there's been a potential breach in their statutory requirement to maintain their security, or if there's lost or stolen firearm.
Okay, thank you for that answer. Mr. President, I'd like to offer an amendment. So if the committee chair is not opposed to the opportunity to offer an amendment.
Senator, we have two the committee amendments are on the in front of the body. Senator, want to make a motion?
Yes, sir. I'll just ask that the bill and the amendments lie over under the rules and we can have further discussion.
Thank you.
All right, the amendment is in order. The bill and the amendment will lie over under the rules. Clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 331, Senator Folden, Public Safety Handgun Permits Expiration Renewal Periods for Retired Law Enforcement Officers, favorable.
Recognizing the bill sponsor is the floor leader.
Mr. President, this bill before you alters the expiration and renewal periods for a handgun permit issued to a retired law enforcement officer who retired in good standing from service with a law enforcement agency of the state or a county or a municipal corporation of the state. Under the bill, the handgun permit expires on the last day of the holder's birth month following 5 years after the date the permit is issued and may be renewed for successive periods of 5 years, each if at the time of the application for renewal, the applicant possesses the qualifications for the issuance of said permit. There are no committee amendments, and I would move the adoption of the favorable committee report, Mr. President.
All right, floor leader moves to the adoption of the favorable committee report. Any discussion on the report? Any objections? Recognizing chair of the committee?
No, no thanks.
All right. No, just on the report. Without objection, the favorable committee report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 331 is hereby ordered. Printed for third reading. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 345, Senator Waldstreicher, Vehicle Manufacturers, Dealers, Dealer Associations, Administrative Hearings, favorable to amendments.
Recognizing the bill sponsors, the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. As amended, this bill allows dealer associations or manufacturer associations to resolve a dispute with the Motor Vehicle Administration or to seek clarification or interpretation of any provision of applicable law. There are two committee amendments. Amendment number 1 is technical. Amendment number 2 adds manufacturers. Mr. President, I move the two amendments and the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves to the adoption of the two committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the two committee amendments are adopted. Question on the amended report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the amended report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 345 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 437, Senator Folden, Criminal Law, Theft and Fraud, Crimes, Valuation and Forgery of Gift Cards, favorable with one amendment.
Recognizing the bill sponsors, the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. As amended, this bill prohibits a person with the intent of defrauding another from altering or tampering with a gift card or its packaging. Violators are guilty of a misdemeanor and subject to imprisonment for up to 18 months and or a $500 maximum fine. The bill also establishes a valuation method for gift cards for purposes of the theft statute. There's one committee amendment which alters the valuation method under the bill. And with that, Mr. President, I would move the adoption of the committee amendment and the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves to the adoption of the one committee amendment and the favorable committee report. On the amendment, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the one committee amendment is adopted. Question now on the amended report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the amended report is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 437 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 482, Senator McKay, Criminal Law, Interference with Criminal Infrastructure or Public Safety, Answering Point, favorable with two amendments.
Recognizing the bill sponsors, the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, Senate Bill 482 as amended. This bill alters the existing offense to prohibit a person for intentionally, willfully, or without authorization committing a violation of the criminal law article with intent to interrupt or impair the functioning of critical infrastructure or a public safety answering point. Violators are guilty of a felony subject to an existing penalty of imprisonment up to 5 years or a $25,000 maximum fine. The bill also establishes a new offense by prohibiting a person from intentionally, willfully, or without authorization committing a violation that denies access to an authorized user of or interprets or impairs the functioning of a critical functioning or a PSAP. The offense is a felony punishable by imprisonment up to 10 years or a $50,000 maximum fine. There are two committee amendments. One is technical. One also adds mens rea requirement. Mr. President, I move the adoption of the committee report with two amendments.
Floor leader moves to the adoption of the two committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, recognize the senator from District 7.
Thank you, Mr. President. Will the floor leader yield for a quick question?
Sir, yes, sir.
Senator may proceed.
Thank you. I just have to ask, and I'm sorry I don't know it. What is a public safety answering point?
So,
it's like a block. Blockchain.
Will the floor leader yield? I'm happy to be helpful if that's useful.
that'd be fine.
Floor leader yield.
I'd love to have your 2
senator
cents
from
on this.
Montgomery County.
Thank you, Mr. President. A PSAP is a 911 center.
Okay. So that's the new term we're calling 911 centers, is public safety answering points?
It's not a new term. It's the term of art. And it's extensive throughout our code.
Okay. Okay, well, new to me. As leader said, you learn something new every day, so I'll have to go back and look at some of that in the other bills. Thanks.
All right, on the two amendments, recognize Senator from Montgomery County on the amendments.
Thank you, Mr. President. Would the sponsor of the bill yield?
Yes, ma'am.
Sir, may proceed.
Thank you. So I'm just curious how this bill, and I'm looking at the reprint, wondering, a few years ago, the Vice Chair of Judicial Proceedings and I passed a law about swatting, which was also interfering with the PSAP, or Public Safety Answering Point, in order to make it harder for our constituents to get through to police, fire, or paramedics. Wondering how this dovetails with that, how it's different, and how it works with that.
So I did not look at our previous squatting. My understanding is it's similar, and it deals with the whole system outage, system-wide.
Would you mind if we chat about it a little later and we just special order it until tomorrow?
Absolutely.
Perfect.
I'll
save that.
Mr. President, can we lay the bill over till the appropriate time?
Do that.
Senator's
That's fine.
motion is in order. The bill and the amendment will lie over under the rule. All right, let's see. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 516, Senator Waldstreicher, Law Enforcement Protective Body Armor Requirements and Reporting, favorable with two amendments.
Recognize the bill sponsors, the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. As amended, this bill prohibits a law enforcement agency from assigning a law enforcement officer to duties other than administrative duties unless the officer is issued protective body armor. It also establishes requirements for the issuance and replacement of that body armor, and establishes provisions related to the failure of a law enforcement agency to replace the body armor as required under the bill. There are two committee amendments. Amendment number 1 adds sponsors. Amendment number 2 alters the provision of the bill related to the withholding of funding should the agency not provide body armor. Mr. President, I move the two committee amendments and the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves to the adoption of the two committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the two committee amendments are adopted. Question now on the amended report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the amended report is adopted. Are there any amendments, further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 516 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 745, Senator McKay, Police Training, Autism, and Dementia Lead Act of 2026, favorable with two amendments.
Recognize the bill sponsors, the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, Senate Bill 745, as amended, this bill requires the Maryland Police Training and Standards Commission to require an entrance-level police training and determined by MPTSC for the in-service level training conducted by the state in each county and municipal police training school, that a curriculum and a minimum course of study include consistent with established law enforcement standards of federal and state constitutional provisions, training regarding individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities, dementia, and autism, including training for locating an individual who is wandering, eloping, or otherwise missing, searching near bodies of water, sensory awareness approaches, reunification, documentation, and coordination. There are two committee amendments. Amendment number 1 adds sponsors to the bill. Number 2 recodifies existing requirements to be included under the new language under the bill. Mr. President, I move the adoption of the favorable committee report with two amendments.
Floor leader moves to the adoption of the two committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the two committee amendments are adopted. Question now on the amended report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the amended report is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 745 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 775, Senator Smith, Public Safety, Gun Buyback Programs, Destruction of Firearms, favorable with one amendment.
Recognizing Chair of the Committee is the floor leader.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. As amended, this bill requires a federal firearms licensee or a law enforcement agency that operates a gun buyback program to destroy every component part of that firearm. However, this requirement does not apply if the law enforcement agency determines that the firearm is stolen or is evidence of a crime. Violation of the statute is a $10,000 civil fine. If it's an FFL, then the Maryland State Police have the option to revoke their license. Also, as amended, the bill makes a requirement that reasonable efforts must be made, including a search of the National Crime Information Center, the NCIC, database to determine whether the firearm is a crime firearm or has been reported lost or stolen before the firearm or the component parts are destroyed. Mr. President, there is one committee amendment. It adds the requirement to search the NCIC database and move for the adoption of the favorable committee report and the one committee amendment.
Floor Leader moves for the adoption of the one committee amendment and the favorable committee report. On the amendment, recognize the Minority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Floor Leader deal for a question, please.
Senator may proceed.
I've definitely heard of the gun buyback programs, but I always thought that those were programs that were handled by law enforcement rather than by an FFL. Why are the FFLs being included in this?
Thank you for the question. Because they're the two entities that are capable of facilitating a gun buyback program, a transfer of a firearm. It's to be either a law enforcement agency or this FFL, and so that's why they're incorporated in the bill.
I don't know if there's an organization that represents all FFLs, but were they interested in being part of this? I don't necessarily see the incentive for them to be the ones participating in this.
The reason why they're incorporated into the bill is because frequently either you're going to go through a gun buyback and they actually operate it through their facility, or a law enforcement agency will operate it in conjunction with a nonprofit or a church or a community-based organization. So it is necessary for them to be incorporated because they're one of the two entities that can do this. And if you want to accomplish the objective of, one, destroying all the component parts so that they're not recycled into black market, and then two, making sure that if the firearm is received through a gun buyback, that there's a check made to see if it's a crime gun, which is not required under law anymore right now, and to see if it's lost or stolen, which is also not a requirement under the law. So we want to make sure that firearms are returned to their lawful owners if they're lost or stolen, and if they're part of a crime, if they're subject to a crime, or they're suspected to be part of a crime, we want law enforcement to be able to have that information about that firearm before they destroy it in the dark.
So in doing all this checking, does an FFL have access to all the databases that are necessary to see whether a firearm was lost or stolen or used in a crime?
They do.
They do. But that obviously takes time and effort by them. I mean, it just doesn't seem to be an incentive for them to move forward with this, but seems to be a huge problem if they don't do this, because they can actually lose their license could be revoked if they don't do this properly.
That's correct. If they choose to operate a gun buyback. Candidly, the research that
Real quick, you just said if they choose to. Does the FFL not have, I mean, they're not compliant. They don't have to do this.
They don't have to do it.
Okay, so that's
a completely optional exercise. And what I was going to say, candidly, the only gun buybacks that I've seen were actually operated by law enforcement in conjunction with, community-based organizations.
Okay, well, that's why I asked the first question, because that's how I've heard about them too. I wasn't sure that FFLs did that, but this doesn't require an FFL to
absolutely not
to participate in this. Okay, the other thing, just real quick, I wasn't sure if it says that it has to be advertised that the firearm would be destroyed or made permanently inoperable. But then it also said it would be checked to see if it was used in a crime. So how is that done if it's going to be potentially destroyed?
One happens before the other. Upon receipt, they'll run that check, and then if it's clean, then they'll destroy it. The reason, the broader purpose for the bill was that a lot of the definition of a firearm, if it does not include a frame or a receiver, all the other component parts are not considered to be a firearm. And those component parts are then making their way back into, especially with the proliferation of 3D printers and the like, and parts you can order online, are making their way into the black market. Unserialized firearms are proliferating, and these component parts are being used to manufacture those. And so that was the reason why we want to make sure that they're all destroyed if an FFL or law enforcement agency operates a gun buyback.
Okay, all right, then that makes a little bit more sense. The reason I asked it, I mean, obviously in the bill it talks about the gun buyback program first, and saying that obviously has to be advertised that the firearms that are surrendered will be destroyed or made permanent. Then it talks a little bit more about that section and saying that they would immediately be, the section does not apply if a firearm, if a law enforcement agency determines a firearm is stolen or used in a crime. So it's still will, are you saying it still will be destroyed even if it's found that it's in a crime, then it's not destroyed?
The bill requires that if it's found to be within a crime, it's required to be maintained as evidence, and then if it's found to be lost or stolen, there is the FFL or the law enforcement agent has to make a reasonable effort to return those firearms to the lawful owner.
Okay, all right, I appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President.
All right, thank you, Senator. Any further discussion on the amendment? Any objections? Without objection, the one committee amendment is adopted. Question now on the amended report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the amended report is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 775 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. All right, let's go to special order calendar. We've got one bill on the calendar, 28. Clerk will read the bill.
Senate Bill 463, Senator Muse, Municipalities Vagrancy Repeal of Authority to Prohibit. Question is the adoption of the favorable report.
All right, question is on the favorable report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the favorable committee report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 463 is hereby ordered printed for third reading.
Mr. President.
Oh.
Mr. President, I have an amendment here. I thought this was special ordered a few minutes ago. So
It was. Is it a quick one? All right. Let's go ahead. We can pull it back. We'll take up the amendment. Pages will collect and distribute the senator's amendment. Nope, different bill. It's not drawn to the bill. All right, I think we're gonna have to roll it along. All right. All right, sir, may I explain the amendment?
my apologies, Mr. President. I grabbed the wrong amendment from here. This has been on ice for a while. So, Mr. President, this bill, it's just important for the body to know that this legislation will, by eliminating vagrancy from the law as something that is that municipalities and counties can say is illegal, you are setting up a scenario where now it's going to make counties and municipalities not be able to clear people who are congregating in parks and staying longer than they're supposed to, clearing homeless encampments as need be. It mirrors some of the legislative issues that we've seen, some of the issues we've seen in places like New York City, where they've changed policies and now they've had situations where they used to force homeless folks to go to shelters. They've changed that policy, and now they've even had homeless people freezing to death because they've changed their policies about enforcing vagrancy. So this legislation, I think, is a mistake. I think the intention is positive in saying we don't want homelessness to be considered a crime, but by taking vagrancy out of the bill, by taking vagrancy out of the bill, out of the law, I think you're opening up a can of worms you don't want to open up. And I'm concerned that I think the response to my concern will be, well, no, counties and municipalities could still set their own ordinances. But then you're requiring every county or municipality to kind of uniquely figure out how to shape what they want to do just to enforce sort of public safety, public health. So I have an amendment, and I don't know, Mr. Chair, I know we had a little kerfuffle. I'm sorry I had trouble getting the amendment out of my desk. I don't know if we want a day to look at this, or not, or Mr. Floor Leader, because we do have the ability for a layover. Okay, so my amendment, let me explain what my amendment would do. I apologize. My amendment, I just wanted to refresh the body, so the body understands the bill. This section, what my amendment would do is say, this section does not limit a municipality's authority to enforce or adopt an ordinance relating to disorderly conduct, disturbing the peace, or trespass. So I guess what I'm trying to do with this amendment is, I would prefer the bill not happen, because I think we should consider not doing the bill. But if we're going to do the bill, I think it's important to just make very clear that municipalities can enforce public safety, public health, and make sure we don't have some of the situations we've seen in some jurisdictions where they've had some problems with gathering homeless encampments and other issues. And so, Mr. President, that's my amendment, and I'll ask for the body's support.
All right, Senators, moving the amendment. Let's hear from the floor leader.
Yes, sir. Thank you, and thank you for the amendment. However, what's in here is already in law. If you are disorderly, then you can be arrested. If you're disturbing the peace or trespassing, you can be arrested. So I think that's already in law. Having said that, though, because you're such a brother of mine, and you know that, we'll take this as a friendly amendment.
All right. Any objections to the amendment? Without objection, the amendment is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 463 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. All right, Madam Secretary, can we please ring the bells? And actually, before we do the quorum call, we are very pleased to have with us family members of our Deputy Chief of Staff, Jody Sprinkle. We have Jeff and Nikki Sprinkle. Jeff is with the Y of Central Maryland. If we could give them a very, very, very warm Senate welcome. Thank you all for joining us today. Great to see you. All right, can we do a quorum call, Madam Clerk?
Mr. President?
Has everyone recorded their presence? If so, the clerk will take the call. With 42 members in the chamber and a quorum being present, the Senate of Maryland remains in session. Let's go to third reading calendar number 29. Clerk will read the first bill.
Senate Bill 10H, Chair Education, Energy, and the Environment Committee, Environment, Water Resources, and Wetlands Enforcement.
Senate Bill 108 is on third reading, final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 32 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 108, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 328, Senator Folden, Property Tax Credit, Disabled or Fallen Public Safety Officer or Judicial Officer Alterations.
Senate Bill 328 is on third reading, final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 42 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 328, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 503, Senator King, Growing Family Child Care Opportunities Program Funding.
Senate Bill 503 is on third reading for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 42 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 503, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 519, Senator King, Earned Income Tax Credit Assistance Program Implementation, Delay, and Study.
Senate Bill 519 is on third reading, final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 42 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 519 have received a constitutional majority is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 538, Senator McCray, Baltimore City Raffles Organizations affiliated with professional baseball and football teams.
Senate Bill 538 is on third reading, final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 42 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 538 have received a constitutional majority is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 587, Senator Gazzone, Maryland Patient Safety Center Fund, funding.
Senate Bill 587 is on third reading, final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 42 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 587 have received a constitutional majority is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 765, Senator Zucker, Property Taxes, Tax Sales, Legacy Protection Program, and Tax Credits.
Senate Bill 765 is on third reading, final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 42 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 765 have received a constitutional majority is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 767, Senator Ferguson, Property Tax, Credit for Commercial Buildings rented to small businesses.
Senate Bill 767 is on third
President.
reading, final passage. Yes, recognize the minority leader.
Yes, just a quick question for the floor leader.
Senator may proceed.
Certainly.
Hey there, how are you? All in favor of tax credits. I just want to make sure I understand how this goes. Obviously, property tax is imposed on the owner of the building, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so as long as the building is rented or rent to own, then the owner can get the property tax credit?
That is correct.
It's not necessarily saying that it has to be passed on. It's just that you're incentivizing the owners of buildings to rent them.
The owners, correct.
Okay, and then is there any type of selective process when the county or municipalities decides to implement this? Will all buildings within these certain districts be eligible, or is there going to be a selective type process?
All buildings within the designated districts.
Sounds good. Very good bill. Thank you very much.
Thank
Great
you.
bill, Mr. President.
Thank you. All right. Any further discussion on the bill? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 41 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 767 have received a constitutional majority is declared passed. All right, that does it. Desk is clear. Desk is clear. All right, let's go ahead and see. Let's do announcements. Finance.
Thank you, Mr. President. Finance will meet today at 1:30. We have, only 14 bills and 72 witnesses, and we will not be voting today. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Education, Energy, and the Environment.
Mr. President, Tripoli has a busy afternoon. We have 134 witnesses, but we do have one bill we didn't get to on Friday that we're going to take a vote at 1:30 on the one bill, and then we'll move to the bill hearing. So be there at 1:30. We can take that one bill up and then move directly into the bill hearings. Thank you, Mr. President.
Excellent. Thank you. Budget and tax.
Thank you, Mr. President. So this is a big day. This is the first day when there's public information about what we're doing with the budget. There are all 4 of our subcommittees will be presenting publicly their recommendations, and they'll start at 1 o'clock with public safety, and it'll just sort of stagger through all the subcommittees.
Excellent. All right, big day. Chair of Judicial Proceedings.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Judicial Proceedings Committee will meet today at 1 p.m. for bill hearings.
1 p.m. 1 p.m. All right, additional standing committees, select committees, joint committees, delegations. Yes, Anne Arundel delegation.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Anne Arundel County delegation will meet in the Red Room for one quick bill right after session. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Senator. Montgomery County delegation.
Thank you, Mr. President. Yes, Montgomery County delegation colleagues will meet Thursday immediately following the floor session, time permitting. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Let's go back to judicial proceedings.
My apologies, time escaped me here. Let's do 145 for bill hearings.
145, a shift to 145. Senator from Howard?
Thank you, Mr. President. I wanted to introduce the doctor of the day.
Please, Senator may proceed.
If you'd stand, please. The doctor of the day is Dr. Kalpana Prakasa. She works as a hospitalist at the University of Maryland St. Joseph Medical Center. She's from 9A, and we've already put her to work this morning. So thank you so much. Let's give her a warm Senate welcome.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Check the senator from the 40th. Recognize the senator from the 40th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President and colleagues, when I first came to the legislature in 2014, I served 90 days in the House chamber. And at the end of that session, I went back home to my community that I grew up in Penn North. And we had a full-blown uprising in that community where we saw businesses burned to the ground and so much devastation that caught the national stage. Fast forward 12 years later, we're in a position where we see a $12 million brand new recreation center being built right there in the Penn North community. But last night, my aunt called me about 11:30 at night, and whereas around this rec center are filled with vacant houses. There's approximately 30 vacant houses that surround this brand new recreation center that's going to open in probably the next 60 days. And so there was a RFP from the city to award these houses to some developers, over 30-something houses. That was in 2024. Because of the bureaucracy of our local DACD, our state DACD, to this date, these properties still haven't been turned over to developers to make good use of them. And last night at 11:30, about 8 of those 30 houses burned to the ground, including my childhood home in the 1500 block of Clifton Avenue. And so as we come here and we advocate for resources, it's frustrating that we work so hard to try to build up the community, and at a point 12 years later where the community started to feel a sense of hope, a sense of like people cared or about them, is so tragic that we let the bureaucracy of things get in the way of progress that would have turned these, vacant homes into, tax generating facilities. And so my heart goes out to the Penn North community. I know I still have a lot of family, neighbors, and friends there, but I think it's so important that we prioritize making sure that, we do the right thing by these communities and really understand the true investment that we're putting in building communities. So thank you, Mr. President, for the time. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Senator, and appreciate you sharing. Got to do better. Got to get out of our own way sometimes. It's awful. Yeah, thank you. All right, yes, Senator from the 37th.
Thank you, Mr. President. On a different note, on behalf of the Protocol Committee, we have an announcement to make.
Senator may proceed.
Permission to use the senator's name.
Senator may proceed.
This will take us to a different level. Today, colleagues, we are joining together to celebrate in the birthday for one of our distinguished members, the one and only Senator Malcolm Augenstein. Happy birthday!
Happy birthday, Senator. All right, any further work before we adjourn? If not, quorum call, please.
Mr. President.
Has everyone recorded their presence? If so, the clerk will take the call. With 42 members in the chamber and a quorum being present, the Senate of Maryland remains in session, recognizing the majority leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. May I have a point of personal privilege here?
Senator may proceed.
Well, we had a nice surprise, the women of the Senate, this morning when we came in, and if I can use the senator's name, Senator Nick Charles honored all the women today for Women's History Month. And just on behalf of the women in the Senate, we'd like to thank you.
Just to be clear, in the future, permission is required for anything on senators' desks. So, just as a note. All right, Senator may proceed.
Thank you. And with that, I move the Senate of Maryland stand adjourned until Wednesday, March 11th at 10 a.m.
All right, without objection, so ordered. Have a great day, everyone.